we'd never have to talk about it again, which would make you very happy.
You'll probably
877-301-8970.
Mark, when this bill does pass, if it does indeed pass, it will be an anniversary. We'll have to go through this every year.
You know what's incredible, though? I don't want to disparage the members of the House who passed this overwhelmingly, but do you know what they included in this bill? That states' adoption of daylight saving time, should this become law, is voluntary.
That's
so
right.
Does that mean you leave, let's assume, depending on what states do, you leave Massachusetts, it's one time.
That's right.
You go to Rhode Island, it's another
time.
You go to Connecticut, it's another. It's ridiculous.
It's true.
It should be mandatory wherever it
could be
is.
really weird. And I was saying before we went on the air,
Yeah.
I mean, it could get really weird. I mean,
Why?
it might just not be an hour difference. It
Yeah.
might be like a 15 minutes difference. What time is it here? It's 11:09 here.
It is 11:09.
It could be like 11:21 in
They
Providence.
could. Actually, I think Providence is thinking about a 12-minute difference.
That's right. They could really try to fool us.
That's an excellent point.
And by the way,
Margie.
apparently we don't want to go. Our legislature, we're not one of the states, by the way.
There are 20 states or
We're not
19,
one of
we're
them.
not sure, that have already said
Yeah.
we will adopt daylight saving time should Congress permit it. We are not one of those states.
Karen Spilka, who's the Senate president,
Yep.
she is down with wanting daylight saving time like you. But it's
Well,
not.
she says she's for Atlantic Standard Time, which is daylight saving time essentially. Let's not.
Yeah, but supposedly we're waiting till we see what other New England states do, Jim. That's part of the problem.
Can I tell you, this anonymous texter, this should have been our first caller. This person is a genius. I vote for permanent daylight saving time, if for no other reason than we can use more time to debate real versus plastic Christmas trees. That is such a good point.
That's one of our chestnuts that Jim. Here's Maureen from Rhode Island.
Yeah.
I cannot believe we are talking about daylight saving time again. I feel like I'm in an episode of Groundhog Day. Please, no one cares about this like Jim does.
Well, maybe no one cares about it as much. You know, by the way, again.
And somebody else says,
What?
for you to be talking about daylight saving time in July, Jim, is really something else. A lot of opposition.
Why am I
opposition to
talking
this
about
topic.
today, Margie? Why don't you explain that to the anonymous texter?
Because we might be soon to get it.
Right, because the House of Representatives acted yesterday.
So I have to ask you. So
Sure, go ahead.
If the House of Representatives acts and then the Senate acts, we have to talk about it when the Senate acts?
Yes.
Or can we wait until the president
No,
decides he's
We'll
not
talk
gonna
about it when
veto?
the Senate acts.
Yeah.
And then while Donald Trump, my favorite president on this issue, is considering what to
Okay.
do, we will talk about it then, too. By the way, you know, the difference between you and me
Yep.
is when I embrace a cause,
Yes.
I stick with it to the end.
No, I think it's a great cause.
I actually stick with it until after the end. In most cases, well beyond the end. And this is one of those cases. By the way,
Okay.
this is if we're going to debate the merits with you, as we do twice a year, now it's 3 times a
Yep.
year because of this. I understand it's going to be dark in the morning. That's the way it goes. And it's a problem for farmers. There aren't that many farmers left in Massachusetts.
Getting up in the dark is upsetting to lots of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to be getting up in the dark.
What do I say to you every year when you say the same ridiculous thing like that?
You say you get upset about leaving at 4 o'clock.
How do you
when it's
feel?
dark.
How do you feel about going out last night?
About as bad as
Last
I
night-
feel about getting up in the dark.
No,
not
you
having
don't.
the lights come on until 8:30.
Which would you prefer,
or 9
late
o'clock.
at night or light in the morning?
I kind of like the light in the morning, Jim.
Well, unfortunately, that's too bad because that's not what the House voted for. So get over it.
Okay, here's what President Trump said.
What'd he say?
calls this a ridiculous twice-yearly production.
He's right.
We are going
Guy's
with
a
the far
genius.
more popular alternative. He says daylight saving, which gives you a longer, brighter day. And who can be against that? Well, I guess some people are against that.
Let me tell you,
And
the
by
guy
way,
is insightful. He really knows his stuff when it comes to daylight saving time.
This story from the New York Times said the only reason this happened is they were trying to placate Representative Anna Paulina Luna from Florida. Because they want her to lift her legislative blockade as she sought to force the Senate action on the voting restriction
House
bill.
action. Oh, right. The Senate action
Yep.
on Trump's voting thing.
Yeah, so maybe this isn't a genuine effort
Who
here.
cares if it's a genuine effort?
Okay, let's
They
talk to
voted
some
for it.
people. Jim talked. This is the third time we've talked about this year. You know, there is one reason to, as you say, to pass this, so we can never have to talk about this again. But we will have to talk about it when the Senate passes, when Trump passes it. So we've got three more days ahead of us. Kim in the car. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, love you guys.
Thanks.
I've talked to Jim about this before, and I missed it last spring. So I'm just going to remind you of history.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to 1973, the first Arab oil embargo, when the legislature passed a law and made full daylight savings time full time. That took effect in January of 1974, and in September it was repealed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, what are we supposed to take away from that, Kim? Why was that?
That we've already tried, Jim, we've already tried full-time daylight savings time. It lasted like 9 months, and it was gone.
Well, the fact that we made a mistake once doesn't mean we should make a mistake forever. This is our opportunity to correct it.
Jim.
Yes.
Jim, it's not healthy for us. It's bad. Bad. Medical experts say it's really bad for us, and places in the upper Midwest at the end of the western end of the central time zone didn't see daylight in the morning in February till 9 o'clock.
Kim, you know the solution. Kim, you know the solution to that. We've discussed this. Don't live in the Midwest. Kim, thank you very much for your history lesson. I appreciate it.
Peter in Mystic, Connecticut wants to move the clocks by 1/2 hour and then never have to speak at this again. Just kind of a compromise kind of deal. Switch the clocks once,
He
30
says,
minutes.
make it stop.
Yeah, make it stop. He does. Well, people are sick of talking about this, Jim.
Would you not
Listen
agree?
to poor John from Peabody. He's pointing out that we have a crisis here. We got the Canadian wildfires going. He's driving around in the dark right now, 11:30 in the morning. It's 11:30 in the morning. It's almost 11:30 in the morning.
11:15.
You know, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, especially if you have any kind of lung issues going on. This is really bad.
So what's
you know
your
how
point?
you look at behind you, Jim.
What is your
look
point?
at behind me.
Yeah.
Everything's yellow.
Yellow.
It's
but
yellow.
what is the point? Well, it's because there's a yellow truck outside the window. This is like...
That's not
you know,
why.
that is exactly why. It's a yellow WB Mason
behind
truck.
you is yellow, too.
Yeah,
See?
nice try. It is
Is there any
actually.
yellow truck behind you,
No,
Jim?
it's not. There
It's
should
still
be.
yellow. That's Canadian wildfires. People are choking all over the Commonwealth.
Now,
Let's
let
go
me just say, John from Peabody's point is, why are we discussing daylight saving time when there's all this wildfire?
Because Jim uses any excuse,
can I answer his question?
excuse to discuss
The
this.
answer to his question
And then we all get
is because we
jawboned
can't
into it.
discuss National Hot Dog Day until 12:30. That's why we're discussing daylight saving time.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, you just said daylight savings time.
Whatever. Here's the anonymous texter. We'll name it the, quote, finally shut Jim up Sunshine Act that should easily pass Congress.
That's right.
By the way, I know people like to aggravate me. You know that the majority of people in this country support daylight and later time.
I don't know that at all.
Yes, I do know
we
that.
don't have any polling on
Will
that,
in Reading, you are next on whatever it is, Boston Public, BPR, Boston Public Radio. Hello there. Hi.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
I'm glad you brought it up again. Good. It's not my fault. The last time you talked about this, I made a list of all the clocks and devices I need to change.
Yeah, how many?
21 different
That's
devices.
my point exactly.
Will.
I need to change every time.
Yeah.
So, most of us, have watches that change automatically, stoves that change automatically, radios. You're kind of got the old-fashioned kind of deal going there?
My watch doesn't change.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't have a smart house. The only things that change automatically are indoor, outdoor weather station, and my phones. Yeah, iPhone.
Huh.
So, Will, you were obviously aware, or you wouldn't have called. If the great Donald Trump and I get our way on this, you'll never have to do it again. Is that not uplifting to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one other point about, not getting light as early.
Yeah.
By the time you're done with breakfast, it's light out.
Exactly.
So maybe you have to get up early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will, that was
we're
a
gonna be getting up in
fabulous
the
phone
dark.
call. Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
Here's Chris from Rosendale.
What's he say?
Oh, my. Daylight saving time possibly becoming law on National Hot Dog Day. Could this be Jim's all-time best day ever? And
It's a good day. I have to admit it's a good day. It's a good day.
And what
He is moving like a tremendous machine.
That's right. That's Secretary.
He became
of course,
a hot dog later.
One of the UPS drivers says, I'm going to miss Jim correcting everybody saying daylight savings and not saving when this becomes law.
By the way, even though you allegedly are not on the same side as I am here,
Yep.
everybody knows that you support my position, but just can't bring yourself to admit it publicly.
Okay.
Does it not drive you? It's one thing for average people to say savings.
Mm-hmm.
Are you not
Everybody
appalled?
says it.
that reporters and broadcasters and anchors on television and radio don't know that it's saving?
Yeah, punctuation, plurals, grammar, it's out the window, Jim. It's very yesterday.
Yeah.
Tom in Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hello, Tom.
Yet another instance where Jim is 100% wrong.
Why is it yet another?
100% in agreement.
Okay.
Daylight savings. You want the sun to rise at 8 in the morning. Come on, Jim.
Yeah, I want the sun to set at 8 in the evening, Tom.
Then move to Florida.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom. Don't get so excited. Thank you. That was
that's where it's big. Florida. Marco Rubio, he was there with Markey on this. The Floridians are big into daylight saving time being changed. I'm not really sure why that is. And by the way, there are a lot of exceptions to daylight saving. I didn't know this. Hawaii, Arizona, Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Northern.
Are you going to American Samoa anytime soon?
I'm not. I might go to the Northern Mariana Islands.
I'm
not sure where they are.
There is a theme, a thread that is run through almost all of the calls and texts today. Jeff in Andover captures it. Whatever shuts Jim up is the best for everyone. The real question is, will this impact white versus color holiday lights, or keeping your sheets wet to cool off at night? We do tend to get stuck on certain issues.
You tend to get stuck on
Excuse me, who is the wet sheet woman?
I don't want to do wet sheets anymore. I've moved past wet sheets.
Yeah.
I moved past wet sheets. I now have an air conditioner. I've moved into the 21st century. But you love to do these old chestnuts. Jim thinks that if Christmas comes and we don't have a debate about white lights versus colored lights or
we're
fake
letting
Christmas,
down the listeners.
We're letting down the listeners.
Make it stop.
Yeah, well,
Exactly.
it's not stopping, so don't even think about it.
Let's go to Scott in Fort Lauderdale. Hi.
Hi, Scott.
Yes, hello. I used to be in New England for most of my life. I've been down here for 6 years.
How's that going?
Well, it's different here, for sure. You have much more daylight at this time of year than we do. You have about an hour and a half more than we do.
Really? I didn't know that.
And our sun never sets after 8:20, and never rises before 6 a.m. So you've got quite a bit more at this time of year. And I know this change might work in this area of extreme South Florida. But when I lived in New England for over 50 years, I know what you're thinking, Jim. You're thinking, I know how much you enjoy springtime when it arrives. I did too. It's like the casing of ice around each of us is cracking. But when you have that extra hour in the afternoon in December through February, people aren't going to be going outside and walking down, the parkway, enjoying themselves. It's not the same thing.
Great point.
It's going to be very dark in the morning. People are going to be in very bad moods most of the time during the winter because daytime doesn't even start until 9 o'clock.
So we'll put you down as undecided, Scott. Is that what you're saying? Scott, let me ask you a
But you know something?
question.
You know something? I'm with Scott on this kind of thing because when it is. I don't like it to be dark at 4 o'clock, but there's something about it that's foreboding about we're going into winter. It's going to be dark. It's going to be dark. We're going into Christmas.
Foreboding is not good.
Well, but then you get to Christmas, and then you get to December, and it starts changing. And I kind of like that. Getting up.
What do you like about it?
Because I'm not wild on having it being dark until 8:30 in the morning every day. That's why.
You keep saying the same thing. I mean,
well,
that's just not an acceptable argument to me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Just tuned in.
By the way, this should be a secret ballot. I mean, if this were a secret ballot, it'd be 2-0, and then people would know where Marjorie really was.
People have had it with this, Jim.
Why?
Another texter says, just tuned in, Jim. Are you serious? You make us talk about this twice a year. We're somehow convinced the rest of the show to talk about it a third time.
Yes, that's correct.
Listen, I am with you, anonymous texter. This is what happens. We all get bowled over here. It's outrageous.
Okay,
Chuck
so anonymous texter, talk about selfish. Listen to this anonymous texter. How much more time would we all have if we never had to talk about this on the show? That's like 15 hours. It's like 15 hours of my life. I'd have back.
Yeah.
Well, the answer to this texter is when and if the Senate passes this, and my favorite president, Donald Trump, signs it into law, we'll never have to talk about it again, except maybe to briefly celebrate it on the days where we would have, what's the word, sprung ahead or flip. What do you do? You don't flip back. What do you do?
I would have rather watched Congress
What do you do back? What's a verb? Fall back.
Fall
Thank
back.
you,
Spring
Hannah.
ahead and fall back.
Whoever said that, Zoe, somebody.
Senator Whitehouse is really going after Todd Blanche up there on the asking if he'd support Kash Patel. Remember Kash Patel? He's the one that wanted the VIP snorkeling over the remains at Pearl Harbor of all the brave Americans who lost their life that day. That's why people aren't supposed to snorkel there, but Kash Patel did. Oh boy. He's getting...
well, we're going to talk about this.
He's getting hammered.
Yeah, okay. Well, Kash Patel's always hammered. That's part of the problem. Isn't that what the whole issue is? Is that what you meant? Okay.
Yeah, Blanche is getting hammered too.
We'll discuss this with Juliette.
Chuck in Brighton, thank you for calling.
Yeah, hi Chuck.
Hey, Jim, Marjorie, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I'd rather drive to work in the dark than drive home in the dark.
Exactly.
But Jim, I'm just curious, like when you come into work from Cambridge, do you have a secret underground tunnel that you go in so you could not see outside and then celebrate only getting 50% of the way there towards getting to daylight saving? Because I don't know if you've looked outside. Today is not a day to celebrate. Today is a day to duck and cover because the world is ending.
Chuck, unfortunately, I cannot disclose how I get to work in the morning. I
but you're
appreciate
right.
your question.
You're right. We're going to talk to some environmental people coming up. We're going to talk to them about what we should be doing and have done and have achieved in Massachusetts. But certainly we're going to talk about this. I mean, it's really horrible out. Yeah, it's yellow, and it's very, very bad for our health to have this level of smoke in the air. And this is what how many times have we had Canadian wildfires doing this to us in the summer? How about the people in California? There's wildfires there all the time.
And deadly.
And they had massive floods in Texas. But
Juliette worked. Our next guest worked on that film, that CNN film about Paradise, California.
Yeah.
What happened to?
And,
I think it was Miles O'Brien.
And the president is a climate change denier, as we know.
By the way, a lot
but
of
it's okay
people-
because he's down with Jim on daylight saving.
And a lot of people believe there'd be no more wildfires if we had daylight saving time, and that's most of the important scientists.
Let's squeeze in a couple more
Sarah
calls if we
Groton.
can. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for calling.
Hi, big fan of both of you.
Thanks.
Except I totally disagree with Jim on this one.
Yeah.
I feel that if you have an hour left of sunlight at the end of the day when you're tired, that means you still got to go do something. I like the day to end. It's dark at 4 o'clock. Good. I'm going home. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I hear you, and that has some merit, but I'll tell you, I say this all the time. Marjorie has said it about 12 times today. When you leave work and it's dark out in the late afternoon, it is really depressing, Sarah. Would you not agree with that? Oh, Sarah disappeared. I'm sorry. Sarah, thank you for the call.
Texter wants to know, since this is the third time we're talking about this just this year, usually we only do these things once a year. He wants to know what your old chestnut lineup is for this fall and spring, Jim.
Well, anonymous texters say, can we talk about Harriet Heinemann instead? We'll move on to her. As soon as this is
God, what happened to Harriet Heinemann?
I can't disclose that either.
We haven't talked
Well, you don't know
about
what's
her
going
in
on,
quite
do you really?
No.
So I wouldn't say that nothing is going on because you don't know if something is going on.
Do you want to disclose?
No, I do.
What's
Obviously,
going
if
on?
I did, I would, wouldn't I? And as soon as I said to Jamie this morning, we weren't going to share this, but I will now. I said to him, as soon as daylight saving time becomes law, I will give an update on the Harriet Heinemann situation, but not a minute before.
Harriet Heinemann is a shot putter. She was the love of Jim's life back in high school. Didn't work out well. 1,
she was not the love of my life. 2, she was not a shot putter. And 3, I didn't know her in high school. Okay. Other than that was an incredibly accurate statement.
Okay. I think we have run out of time on this one, Jim.
No, but don't worry. We've run out of time. We're going to talk about it tomorrow, too, until it becomes law. And every day thereafter. Until Trump signs the bill.
We are done. Thank goodness.
Good for Trump on this one.
Coming up after this quick break, we are going to talk with Juliette Kayyem. We're going to talk to her about Todd Blanche, who is on the stand right now in Congress, the Iran war, and a bunch of other security issues. I'm Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browdy. You are listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News in a city of Boston, which is very yellow because of the smoke from the Canadian wildfires. We'll be right back.
More than 1,500 soldiers once filled Harvard Yard, turning classrooms into barracks. But while the revolution was brewing, most students stuck to studying.
The morning would be spent in recitation. They're not getting radicalized.
I'm Kirk Carapezza. As part of GBH News' series From Colony to Commonwealth, we explore what colonial campuses were really like during America's founding on the latest episode of College Uncovered. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Harvard Business School Baker Library, featuring an exhibit on Muriel Siebert, the first woman to buy a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, open to the public. Details at library.hbs.edu. And Cambridge Trust, a division of Eastern Bank, dedicated to helping individuals and businesses pursue their financial goals with a full range of banking and wealth management services. Learn more at cambridgetrust.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. GOP candidate for governor Mike Minogue joins us for the first time tomorrow. We're looking forward to that. Joined now at the library desk by Juliette Kayyem. Juliette's former assistant secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security program at Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, and CNN senior national security analyst. Her new Substack, which is terrific, is called Early Warning with Juliette Kayyem. Early Warning with Juliette.substack.com. Hi, Juliette. How are you?
Hi.
Hello,
thank you
Juliette
for the I'm having
Kayyem.
fun with it.
So, Juliette, since we were busy talking about the possibility of daylight saving time being all year round, we couldn't follow what Todd Blanche was saying up on the in Congress. He wants to be the full-time Attorney General as opposed to just the temporary Attorney General. How is he doing?
Oh, I've just been listening. I mean, look, the Todd Blanche is one of these people who's qualified on paper, except for everything that he has done in the last 2 years, which is he has asserted himself as the president's, weapon for everything that the president wants to do vis-a-vis protecting the president's assets, going after reporters, challenging voting rights, and of course protecting the president on Epstein. I think the question I can't answer for you because I don't know the politics of Epstein on the right and what kind of pressure Republican senators are getting is how much does Todd Blanche's sort of what we know is hiding of a lot of the Epstein files, how much of that is going to impact this hearing. But look, I mean, he is trying to be Attorney General of the United States. He has no pretense of why he's there. I mean, he is there to investigate Democrats, investigate Democratic organizations like fundraising organizations to protect the president's business interests. Yeah, he is qualified, as I said, on paper. He is not qualified in terms of substance, but I don't know how this unfolds.
We should add that the judge in Miami the other day, we talked about this federal judge in this case, not only described how outrageous and self-dealing the litigation was that for in the short term led to that $1.8 billion slush fund and the incredible sweetheart deal Trump got with the IRS. But the judge in that case referred the name of Todd Blanche to, I think, the New York Bar Association.
Yes, New York City Bar Association.
And you know what I failed to mention yesterday? 35 former federal judges filed an amicus in that case. You know who led that charge? Nancy Gertner and Judge Ludwig.
Oh, that's right.
They were the leaders of that effort.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a tweet, it was hilarious, that said, only Donald Trump could sue himself and lose. I mean, it's true. I was like, I never thought of it that way, but he did. And Blanche, don't believe a word he says, whatever. He's just trying to get through the confirmation process. But apparently he said to Senator Durbin, it was a mistake to push that case. So I don't know what we're going to hear him say publicly about that case, but this guy just wants to be Attorney General. I was talking about him last night to a friend of mine. Like, there's people who have always been very conservative who are looking for Trump. People who are on the bandwagon for all sorts of reasons. There's his public, the voters who support him. But like someone like Todd Blanche is just such an interesting. Oh, my.
It's National Hot Dog Day.
It's National Hot
Keep
Dog Day.
talking,
Peter has brought me.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Okay,
oh my God.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, as we were saying, let's
thank
continue.
You, Peter,
thank
at the Lennox Hotel.
Okay, let's continue. Thank
okay,
you.
I'm so happy.
Todd
wow, that looks really great.
Everything
there.
on it, everything on it. And so, National Hot Dog Day. I don't bring a hot dog.
Okay,
to the
let's
studio.
continue.
Anyway,
Thank you. Thank you.
He was a Democrat who got hired by Trump, but not only was serving as a lawyer, which you can argue is justifiable, but has now truly drunk the Kool-Aid. It's a remarkable transformation. I know lots and lots of people who knew him in his D.C. days. He had been an assistant U.S. attorney. I mean, he knows the rule book.
You know what I think is not going to go well? His base that's very upset about the Epstein files. Of course, we all know he went down to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, after which she was...
Todd Blanche.
Yes, Todd Blanche went down to interview Ghislaine Maxwell. After the interview, she was transferred to a minimum security prison where she's getting all these special rules. I mean, a lot of his base is still very upset about the Epstein files, as they should be. Women's names, addresses, information about them has all been released against their will, and then the perpetrators' names covered up.
Yeah.
So he's done that.
Yeah.
Can we, we're talking to Juliette Kayyem. Your new Substack, you wrote a really good piece about reform of ICE in the wake of the killing in Houston and in Biddeford, Maine. But before we get to what you had to say, there's actually breaking news in the last hour on the ICE front. And tell us what Trump has done.
All I say, this is no way to run a government, regardless of your opinions about enforcement. As everyone knows, most recently, there's been other killings. ICE has killed 2 men, Hispanic men, who they were not looking for, but who sort of crossed ways with ICE and shot them dead. So any argument by ICE about the person that they killed, culpability is falling apart, as it always does in these cases. In fact, the second case in Maine was so objectionable and horrible with no justification, and the videos were already out, that ICE couldn't even pretend and said it wasn't a question of self-defense for the law enforcement agency. It was to protect the public from a potential public safety threat. I was like, that's all of us. That's all of us. We're jaywalking. That's a public safety threat. By
the way, in the video we have does not show him driving off at 80 miles an hour. No. It shows him driving slowly in a circle.
To get into a drive, and then to what apparently was, and look, they're not identified. They're in vans that aren't identified. So he's surrounded by this thing, and he's trying to, the individual is trying to de-escalate. That's not how this works. In a shocking assessment or turnaround by DHS, because they always double down. The secretary said that they were going to suspend temporarily most of these vehicular stops. Most law enforcement agencies have rules prohibiting shooting into a moving car for obvious reasons. ICE does not. And then I'm literally walking in, and someone texted me and said, "Did you see that Trump just rescinded the rescission?" This is no way to run an agency, any agency. It also shows that the power of the White House to exert, and I mean Stephen Miller, to exert operational control over an agency that clearly in the last week has shown it should not have certain authorities is shocking. And but the president is so tied to Stephen Miller at this stage, and the president probably believes it. So that's where we are now. And it's just no way to run an agency, but it's no way to fix the problem of ICE. And that leaves Democrats and progressives with a single mantra, which is abolish ICE, which is I'm telling my friends, it's a trap. It's a trap because the American public voted for Donald Trump. We lost that battle in 2024. It was clear that most of the American public, the dynamics may have changed by now, do not like the sort of more permissive open borders, the more that the Biden administration rightfully can be accused of. The Biden administration got their act together the last 6 months and showed you don't need comprehensive immigration reform to control our borders. So what do we do with a nation or a populace that seems actually aligned? This should give us hope. They want strong enforcement at the border, they really don't like this interior enforcement stuff. So the question isn't abolish ICE. I get abolish this ICE. The question that I wrote about is, what does a responsible enforcement agency, knowing enforcement is icky, I'm not, it's all, actually, how can it better serve the American public? So
the thing that I don't understand, I'm sort of, the whole abolish ICE thing.
Yeah.
Every time I see it from a serious politician, I go and try to find a story about it, and almost without exception, what the story goes on to say, abolish ICE and replace it with a more responsible agency from the ground up. But politicians should know, if you say the magic words, abolish ICE, that's all it's going to be in the quote.
Like defund
You're never
the police.
Exactly.
If you're explaining it,
I agree with you, and you'd never get to the explanation.
So reform ICE, fix ICE, something.
Demilitarize ICE is where
that's a good one too.
Or professionalize ICE, one or the other. I haven't landed on it yet, but I think, look, for most presidencies, ICE, look, I know there are progressives who are listening and others who just believe that enforcement is inherently bad and don't want this as part of our agenda, and we can have that debate, but that's not this debate. This debate is that every nation gets, ought to be able to detain and deport those who are here unlawfully based on standards that are related to public safety. So no one likes the woman, who's, a grandmother who's deported or the DACAs, and the American public gets that. We can solve that.
Nobody likes a guy that's been in the country 35 years, totally responsibly in Houston,
and the 3 sons.
or a 20-something guy who's a father and a husband, I think, who has work permits. By the way, here's Trump's actual True Social post.
Oh, is it True Social? I didn't even know how it came out.
Post. The men and women, this is a day and a half after someone was killed on the streets of Biddeford, Maine, and less than a week after someone killed in the streets of Houston. The men and women of ICE are doing a, capital letters, great job, one that has to be done. We, capital letters, cannot give up on one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools, the traffic stop in capital letters. So, it's,
this is not. So look, I know what, if the Democrats win, I know what post-November looks like for ICE, and I don't know why they're not positioning them for it. There is going to be a review of an oversight of almost all of these policies. You're going to have local and state jurisdictions, including Texas, folks, step in because you cannot sustain an ICE like this, step in and get the materials. Minnesota just finally got the information from the 2 killings of American citizens earlier, and so. But Trump somehow believes that the American public wants this, and they don't. So that should give us some hope.
By the way, we should say, you mentioned this yesterday. I think it was to John King. This has huge potential to play a major role in the Susan Collins versus whoever the Democrat is. Collins was a key vote for this huge, huge ICE funding bill. And obviously, it could not be a bigger topic.
Well, especially since up in Maine, you hear all these stories about rural hospitals and people losing their health care and not being able to afford the Obamacare, no longer with the subsidies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a big problem.
I do. I think for Collins, the question she has to answer is, what did she think would happen? I mean, in other words, no law enforcement agency has ever, been drowning in so much money, told to scale so quickly, changed its training and exercise and onboarding capacity. We've learned that the guy in Maine, I think, was from Veterans Affairs. He was a police entity or a law enforcement entity within Veterans Affairs, with a number quota from the White House. This, to me, like when I write about sort of root causes, to me, the problem with what's going on is you have numbers being driven by the White House that are not in relation to the public safety threat. So you got to get an alignment around that, and that won't change under this administration. So, but neither will abolish ICE, right? So whoever takes the mantra for the Democratic administration and going to be president, don't raise your hand. because you know the reporter's going to ask that, and it's not going to go far with the American public to say, I want to get rid of this thing. Have ideas.
So before you go, we are back at war, obviously, in Iran, and do we know anything about negotiations? Are they happening?
My understanding is that they're not ongoing right now, and that what negotiations are is the Gulf states are now just directly calling Trump. So the sort of taco-esque, Trump always chickens out, taco-esque aspects of what happened 2 days ago with the fining, his threat to fine anything that came through Hormuz was because of an onslaught of phone calls from the Gulf nations, because we do have bases there, and that is basically whoever last talked to Trump is our war strategy, right? And meanwhile, that we have no long-term strategy. And I don't know why I still keep seeing people on TV, including on my network, that I think has some of the more reactionary analysts, and that's why I often read, Al Jazeera or watch Al Jazeera just to see, okay, how's the rest of the world doing it? Who focus on Iran's desire for peace. I don't see it. Like, Iran is fighting for its life. It is focused on deterrence, and this idea that they'll eventually fold. They're not. They don't have an election coming up. I mean, that's what happens when you decide to go to war with a fundamentalist country that has no democratic constituency. They get to string this out, and Trump still doesn't seem to see that.
Juliette Kayyem, thank you
Look,
very much.
It's a day
now
a week.
You can mention
it's a
National
day
Hot
a
Dog.
week.
National Hot
Dog Day. Kayyem, hot dogs.
Yeah,
the best.
Jamie asked, you're not related.
No,
right?
it's one Y. And it's a
Oh,
combination of two Polish. I did look this up because maybe you never know. I could be the hot dog. I've done a lot of things in my life. I could be a hot dog entrepreneur. It's like the two Polish brothers' first name. One was K.A. something or Y, and one was E.M. something, and so they combined them. So
what's incredible?
No relation to
We didn't know if
Kayyem.
you were related. Marjorie asked me, my whole name, which you don't know, is James Hebrew National Browdy.
Yeah.
But I
think
am not related to the Hebrew
them
National people either.
Kayyem are the best.
That's incredible.
I'll see you guys later, but thank you.
Thank you, Juliette.
Bye.
Juliette is the former
you, Juliette.
Assistant Secretary
Good
of
to see
Homeland
you. Enjoy
Security
your
to
job.
President Barack Obama, Faculty Chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN's Senior National Security Analyst. Her new Substack, Early Warning with Juliette Kayyem. That's Early Warning with Juliette Kayyem.substack.com. Okay, coming up after this quick break, UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator in Ukraine, Assistant Secretary General Matthias Schmale joins us with the latest on the humanitarian crisis there. I'm Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR, GBH, NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, President Trump wants a 250-foot-tall triumphal arch between the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington National Cemetery. Art critic Sebastian Smee calls it atrocious, a swaggering showpiece interrupting a solemn conversation about sacrifice, democracy, and the honored dead. Plus, before Rothko and Gottlieb became painting legends, they spent summers in Gloucester with their mentor, Milton Avery. The result was an evolution in American art. That and more today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And South Coast Artists, presenting its 23rd annual Open Studio Tour July 18th and 19th in Tiverton and Little Compton, Rhode Island, and Dartmouth and Westport, Massachusetts. Tour brochure downloads available at southcoastartists.org.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin, and former NASA head Charles Bolden. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. GOP candidate for governor Mike Minogue will make his first appearance on our show tomorrow, and we expect to have a date from current Governor Healy for July by the end of today. We'll let you know about it tomorrow. Yesterday, the United Nations released a report on the latest violence in Ukraine, and the situation is dire. Civilian casualties from Russia's war of aggression were nearly 40% higher in 2026 than in the same period last year. These casualties, over 1,300 dead, nearly 8,000 injured already in 2026, and with nearly 300 civilians killed and almost 3,000 injured last month alone, it makes it the deadliest month for Ukraine's civilians since April of 2022. Joining now on Zoom from Geneva is UN Assistant Secretary General Matthias Schmale. He is the UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator in Ukraine, and we welcome him to Boston Public Radio. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for being with us. So can you explain why things are particularly deadly for civilians right now in this war?
Well, I cannot explain to you what motivates the armed forces of the Russian Federation to increase their attacks. This is an increasingly technological war through the air, so drones, missiles, but also landmines. I was in Kherson a few weeks ago in the south, where I actually came across landmines, very small landmines. I think they refer to them as butterfly mines, generated by 3D printers. Now, back to your question, why is this happening? My experience on the ground with my almost 3,000 UN colleagues and the international community is that this is basically terror. It's trying to weaken the resolve of the civilian population in year 5 before hopefully peace or ceasefire negotiations resume. Because how else can you explain this? It's in Kiev alone, where I'm based. Over the last 2 weeks, we've had at least 3 very deadly attacks. Last week, I was at a site where when I arrived mid-morning, 10 people had already been killed in a destroyed apartment block, and they were looking for 10 more, and by the end of the day, they had found them all dead, including a child. How else do you explain this but trying to weaken the resolve of the civilian population? And to use the term again, I think it's terror or intimidation of the civilian population.
When you say weaken the resolve, I hope as many Ukrainians know how deeply the American people, even if not the administration, is stunningly impressed by their resilience. But a couple of days ago, I was watching a podcast that you were on, and I'm paraphrasing what you said, but you basically said there is a time after which resilience fades. The psychological toll is so immense. I'm amazed that the Ukrainian people have made it 4+ years. What is the tipping point in your estimation?
Yeah, that's a good question. Through this last winter, I at times felt we were reaching the tipping point. You know, we had temperatures of well below -20 degrees Celsius with no energy and heating. And I was wondering myself with Ukrainian colleagues also, if I'm a father with young children in an apartment block that has no heating and no electricity, my family is stuck on the 17th floor with nowhere really to go. At what point will I say, this has to end? Let's just give them the eastern part of the country, the Donbas, and have the weapons be silent. Now, amazingly, through a very harsh winter where I wasn't the only one wondering, is this it? Or is the tipping point going to be reached? People came through this and have picked up the pieces and continue life. Now, one other thing I often say frequently is we should not romanticize resilience. So we see the strength. During this harsh winter, I remember mornings after a cold night of bombing, again, without heating. I didn't have heating in my own apartment for several days. People came out onto the street and had sort of a street party. They brought out warm soup to warm up and to celebrate, basically, that they're still alive. So you see that, this strong resolve, even after a night of horror. But then I also see increasing weariness and tiredness. You know, I think it doesn't take an Einstein to figure out that well into the 5th year of this, mental health is being affected. Traumas are there, especially of children and older people. And I think none of us should be surprised if over time people really struggle staying balanced and getting on with life.
We're talking to Matthias Schmale, who is the Assistant Secretary General of the UN and resident humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine. You know, you just mentioned, if I may, children, and we had this same discussion with a colleague of yours from Gaza City a few months ago about an adult who has lived through this. Arguably, it may comprise 10 or 8% of their life. A little kid, it comprises 4+ years, almost all of their aware, cognitive life. What's the history in your work of how, even when these horrors are over, what the long-term impact is on children who have lived through things like this?
If I may say two things on this. One thing that came to mind as you were asking that question is meeting a young humanitarian worker in Kharkiv in the northeast, the second biggest city in Ukraine. And she was telling me that her son had just turned 4 in 2022 when the full-scale invasion began. 5 years on, she is worried, she said, that her son, who's now almost 9, feels what he's experiencing is normal. He cannot remember what life was like without the air alerts, running to the bunker and hearing the terrible sounds of war. For him, this is normal. It's almost like a daily routine, a normal routine, to wait for the sirens and to run to safety. And she almost cried when she said, I feel at times I'm failing as a mother, not just in failing to protect him, but giving him a sense of this is not normal. This should never be normal for any child. So that's one bit, you know, children like adults adapt and sort of treat this as a coping mechanism as normal life. But then experience has taught us that in war-affected countries, once it's over, it takes at least a generation or two for everyone, and in particular children, to overcome the traumas. We should also remember, in the case of Ukraine, the full-scale invasion in 22 began just after COVID. So we have children who are now 7, 8 years old who've never seen a classroom from inside. They've done online learning. So there is, what I'm getting to is not just the psychological side of this. There is also catching up on learning. We've had 6, 7, 8 years of online learning, the older children age 13 or so. To catch up for that, sometimes I wonder if a whole generation is lost in education terms. So the challenge for children and for all of us supporting Ukraine will be having everyone, including children, deal with their psychological issues, as well as for children catching up on education.
You know, when at the other end of the age frame, I read about a village that is stuck on the front line. You can't get out of there because of the mines. Many of the people have left, but those who are still there are elderly people.
It's occupied by Russia, isn't it?
Who are totally stranded. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we have two situations. As Jim mentioned, we have Ukrainian territory occupied by Russians, and we are receiving reports of some very desperate situations there because exactly they can't really get out. Then we have quite a few older people still living along the front line in government-controlled Ukrainian territory. And I've met quite a few of them in my almost 2 years there, and vividly remember one, I think it was in Kherson again, in the south of the country, which is the capital of that region, of that oblast, is under constant fire, daily fire. And I asked her, if she spoke a bit of German, for some reason I'm German, I asked her if I could find her a decent place to live in Germany, would she go? And she said, absolutely not. I was born here, I grew up here, my whole life is here, I want to die here. And that's a sentiment I've heard quite often, especially among older people. Their life has been there, a very strong attachment to land. And for some of them, no desire to get to greater safety because they want to stay where their life has been and still is.
You know, we're talking about children and older people, and we try to talk as frequently as we can on the show, but not nearly frequently enough about people are living through. I read your remarks from February. 10.8 million have humanitarian needs in Ukraine, a quarter of the population. You're serving roughly half of them. More than 25% of the territory is contaminated by landmines. Beyond the Ukrainians who you're serving, how does your staff survive this kind of pain all around them and the danger in their work?
So I think I mentioned we have almost 3,000 United Nations personnel in Ukraine, and 75% of them are Ukrainian. And I have deep respect for all of them, all the ones I know. I haven't met all 3,000, because they both live the reality of what we're talking about, of normal citizens. They are Ukrainian citizens. So after they return home in the evening from their day's work with the United Nations, they experience what everyone else has experienced. The fear that the air sirens will go off, the fear that you can't protect your children or your mother or your father. So in a way, people working, not just for the UN, of course, but you asked me about my UN colleagues, and especially the Ukrainians, have this double burden. They're trying to, with vigor, with resolve, support the humanitarian work we do, support their fellow country, men and women, and they're trying to survive and stay strong in the middle of quite a horrific war.
You know, many Americans have been upset about the Trump policies involving Ukraine. At the beginning of this war, we were sending a lot more aid under President Biden. How much of a difference has that made? If we had, especially with defensive weaponry, if the United States were there, full stop, and humanitarian aid, yes, how much of a difference would that make in the outcome of this war?
Well, I think in the order of magnitude, the support Ukraine is getting, not just from the US, but from all its supportive countries and allies, is first defense. Secondly, so-called budget support, so keeping civil service running. There were months on end over the last 4.5 years where foreign aid, including US foreign aid, has kept the state services going by paying salaries and paying for some of the material that's needed to run those services. And then thirdly, humanitarian aid. I think on the military front, I'm not a military expert. Of course, the Ukrainians have felt this very strongly around less defensive capabilities. And you know, we've had two situations over the last week that I experienced myself where I, for the first time, experienced that bombs hit before the sirens went off. And that's a clear sign that defensive capabilities are not as strong as before. Last night or 2 nights ago, they shot down all the bombs that were getting there, so it varies. But a week before that, I think 80% of the missiles got through. So that's the defensive side. It's a sort of catch-up game with the rest of the allies trying to chip in with for the support that the Americans have cut. On the budget support side, the same story. Mainly the Europeans, including the EU. You may know that recently the EU agreed a 90 billion euro so-called soft loan to keep the state going. Now, I've been in meetings recently where I've been told this year they should be fine as a result of this, but there are serious worries if the war continues, whether the state can continue functioning into next year. So the hope is that other friendly states will continue to chip in and keep the state going. On the humanitarian side, I must say the support from other countries has remained generous. So as UN, we haven't felt the existential nature of the cuts as much as in other countries, my colleagues in Sudan, for example. The ones who have felt it are small Ukrainian NGOs delivering vital services, for example, to gender-based violence survivors or survivors of conflict-related sexual violence. There's safe spaces that are being run by small NGOs, some of which were directly funded by the US. And as I travel around the country, that's the most direct and terrible impact of less US funding. Another example is independent media. I think Ukraine rightfully prides itself to be a functioning democracy. Part of a functioning democracy is independent media. The US funded quite a bit of the independent media. And again, you can feel for the well-being of this society, the cuts making a difference there, a negative difference.
Matthias Schmale, we thank you for your time today, and I think on behalf of our whole audience, we thank you and your 3,000 colleagues for the incredibly important work you do. Thank you, and we hope to speak to you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Matthias Schmale is Assistant Secretary General, UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator in Ukraine for the United Nations. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NAPM, but make sure to tune in the fabulous 413 starting at 3 this afternoon. The show continues right here in Boston after this quick break. We're going to look at Massachusetts' environmental record with Bradley Campbell from the Conservation Law Foundation and Kate Dean of A Better City. We're going to talk about how well we're doing in Mass and what's going on outside with all the smoke coming down from the Canadian wildfires. We'll be right back.
Do your part to support the programs you love by becoming a GBH Sustainer. Sustainers make easy monthly donations that keep the news you trust on the air, month after month, year after year. Enrolling is simple at gbh.org/sustainer.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering 2 to 3 day courses and executive certificates for professionals seeking cutting-edge business insights on innovation, cybersecurity, AI, and more. Info at executive.mit.edu. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing helpful digital tools, world-class providers, and coverage that help you live in the moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at YouTube. Thank you.com/GBH News. Republican GOP candidate for Governor Mike Minogue is going to be with us tomorrow and back here on Friday with live music and more on the 11th of August. We're going to be joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth. Hello again, Jim.
And we expect to have a date by the end of the day for Governor Healy to join us this month. And by the way, for those who are complaining on text, why are we not yet celebrating National Hot Dog Day? We will start those festivities at the bottom of the hour.
I just had a bite of my hot dog, Jim.
How is it?
It was very good, very good.
From the
Lennox Hotel.
Indeed. Heat waves, smoky skies, never-ending drought, rising sea levels, washed away beaches, nothing quite like summer in New England. So we thought it would be the perfect time to reflect on the Commonwealth's climate, energy, and environmental work. Are we living up to our goals and promises of fighting climate change and bringing renewable energy to the state? 2 environmental leaders join us now at the library desk. Bradley Campbell is the CEO of the Conservation Law Foundation, CLF.org. Brad, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. Kate Dean, who is obviously trouble because she has her computer with her, which always makes me nervous, is the president and CEO of A Better City, abettercity.org. Great to have you too, Kate. Thanks for being here.
Well, before we get to what we've done in Massachusetts, what we could do, A Better City and all that, everything, if you look behind me, you look behind Jim, everything's yellow. And smoky, and people that have lung issues are in really difficult times today. So is this something we can expect is going to be another climate crisis treat we can look forward to every summer?
This is one of the impacts we are going to suffer, and it underscores, to our point today, it underscores the importance of leadership by states like Massachusetts, especially with a climate denier in the White House, to continue progress moving forward on climate and energy.
Kate, I rarely embrace optimism about anything, But when Governor Healy was elected, and she was the first governor in the country to pick a climate chief at the cabinet level, and we spoke to Melissa Hoffer, and we thought that was an important development. Is that job, and is the person who filled it lived up to expectations in 3+ years?
Well, I think that the governor did an incredible service for the Commonwealth when she created this position, the first ever cabinet level state climate chief.
Yeah.
And she is just one of the many members within the administration who has a climate mandate, right? I think of them as like the climate avengers or like Captain Planet, right? You have Melissa Hoffer, you have Secretary Tepper, you have Melissa Lavinson leading the energy transformation, you have Catherine Antos and Alison Brizius.
But isn't Hoffer's job to make sure that every piece of government is considering climate issues within their jurisdiction?
Exactly. So it's an incredible team. I think the climate chief is doing the best she can with, we usually say without a federal partner, but it's beyond not having a federal partner. It's having an antagonist in the White House, blocking and taking away key tools that any state climate leader could use to enforce state-level mandates.
Do you embrace that review of the 3.5 years of Hoffer at all?
I do. And to the point, we just filed our 16th lawsuit to stop various mischief of the Trump administration to stop renewable energy. And we're 6-0 win-loss record on those lawsuits. And in parallel with that, we have seen great leadership from the governor in a number of areas and some landmark achievements in terms of weaning us off of fossil fuels and advancing clean energy. Just in this most recent heat dome and in the earlier late winter cold snap, you could see in real time the impact that even that first trickle of hydro energy and offshore wind energy was having in dampening down prices. And one of the
hydro energy from Canada, is that what we're talking about? Yeah, okay.
And one of the strengths of the Healy team has been that they recognize that the things we need to do to address the climate crisis are also the solutions for affordability. And they've moved forward on those solutions. Even now there's the Senate bill just came out with preserving some of the energy efficiency programs and other tools that we need to continue on the path both to reduce emissions, wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, but also using those same tools, advance affordability and give some relief to families and businesses facing huge utility bills.
We're never positive about anything, so let's keep this going for a couple of seconds here. That's a perfect segue to someone who thinks a lot about transportation. I know you're a commuter rail focused person. It seems to me that with housing, this following up on what Brad said, with housing totally unaffordable in the cities, in major cities, having an effective, affordable commuter rail to get people to housing that is at least comparatively more affordable does do both things, does deal with climate issues and affordability. Is that true?
Doesn't it feel good to be so optimistic?
Briefly, it does.
It does. Yeah. Right. It is, from a Better Cities perspective, we see the transformation of the commuter rail system as a key to unlocking affordable housing development in Greater Boston, building on the framework of the MBTA Communities Law that's requiring zoning for more dense development near transit hubs.
Even though that hasn't produced nearly as much housing as
Correct.
The supporters hoped it would at the beginning.
Yeah,
of
it's
the
been a
process.
real mixed bag. You see paper compliance. You see some communities, I think, really embracing the spirit of the law, too. But in the near term, I think the Healy-Driscoll administration, Interim Secretary General Manager Phil Eng deserve a lot of credit for getting the core MBTA system back on track. Ridership is up, service levels are enhanced, and people are returning to the system. We would like to see that same level of attention paid to the commuter rail and the transformation of the commuter rail, making it more of, we say, regional rail. What that means is a more rapid transit system that people can rely on, that will draw folks out of their cars and onto the trains.
But I'm reading here this piece from Mass Street Blog's Christine McNeil, basically saying that Mass DOT is failing, that that's Department of Transportation doesn't intend to meet the state's legally mandated pollution reduction requirements. So that's not a good sign.
Yep, it's not all plaudits for the administration, that's for sure. And there have been missed opportunities, particularly with the things they can do without the legislature, using their own authorities. And they haven't been helped by there's been changeover in leadership over the term at DOT. And
what could they do themselves that they failed to do, Brad Campbell?
Well, there are a number of things they could do. The agencies have broad rulemaking authority, and both implementing the laws that they have, using the authority, and taking action on urgent threats. I know on past visits to the show, Marjorie's raised the challenges with Cape clean water.
Yeah.
I should say dirty water on the Cape.
Dirty water. It's good.
Early in the administration, they rolled out strong rules to address those issues, and they have since languished.
Why?
Yeah.
They essentially depend on the towns submitting plans and DEP reviewing them and acting on them. The plans they submitted were essentially awful, didn't meet the Healy administration's own rules, and yet there has not been a decision one way or the other on those years into those rules now.
Why? Second time, why? I mean, why would they, if they support the underlying policy and their own rulemaking, why would they not support enforcement? Is this blowback from cities and towns, stay out of our business kind of thing?
It's partly blowback from cities and towns, but there's a general, I think, mystery about some of the decisions that aren't forthcoming.
Okay, mystery. What do you think? I know you don't have proof because you're a legal kind of guy. What do you think is going on?
I think they're reluctant to make decisions. I think in some areas, particularly the Department of Environmental Protection, because they're concerned about what the blowback is. In other cases, it's really hard to explain. Early in the administration, they brought forth rules to regulate coastal development in the face of climate change. The comment period on those rules closed 2 years ago. No decision. And so there are ways in which, in terms of the things they can control internally, there's definitely work to be done. And there are also opportunities that are missed. Right now, there's a ballot question that would provide permanent dedicated funding for land conservation, for nature-based climate solutions.
Nature for Mass is the
Nature
name
for
that
Mass,
goes by,
yeah. And the governor's been silent on that. The administration
we'll ask her about it when she's here in this
month.
Her about But my understanding about this question would raise as much as $100 million by a tax on sporting goods. It's not a new tax. It would essentially take that portion of the sales tax collections that comes from sporting goods and put us in this fund for protecting and conserving water, et cetera. The only problem I see, I mean, the goal is obviously wonderful. The only problem I see is that $100 million that would go to this is now being spent on something else that is not going to be spent on. So it seems to me that the proponents of this at least have an obligation to address that question. They're celebrating, I read their material last night, they're celebrating, I don't mean that in a pejorative way, they're celebrating the fact that there's no new taxes, but there's no new taxes because you're diverting existing tax money away from something else. So what do they say to that? What do you say to that?
Well, this is in part an answer for the fact that the natural resource agencies and the conservation needs have always been the poor stepchild, and the money's always gone somewhere else. And we finally need this measure, as there is in other states. I led two of these measures when I was commissioner in New Jersey, enormously popular, and in any given year I had between $200 and $300 million to spend on exactly these purposes. I was pretty stunned when I came to progressive Massachusetts, and there is no dedicated funding, and this really should be in place in the state that essentially invented conservation and access to nature.
Okay, so we always like to blame someone. Should we blame the legislature or should we blame the governor? Who's to blame here? Why don't we have this?
Well, as you know, the legislature has leadership has a lot of antipathy for ballot initiatives, and I think it has made it complex for the governor. I think now that some of the more...
Marjorie means, why do we even need a ballot question? Why did they just do it in the traditional lawmaking?
They had that chance. It was introduced in bill form.
So this is another legislative falling down the job situation. We talk about this all the time.
Well, also Brad's suggesting the governor could be a stronger supporter. Yeah. Well, she's not a supporter. She hasn't come out.
She hasn't come out against it. Has not come out against it. But often it is the case in state after state that the legislature actually, in many cases, has supported these measures because it validates spending the money there, and it's enormously popular.
Again, it's going to be on the ballot in November. Well, it hasn't been. The second batch of signatures is still sitting in the Secretary of State's office, but in all likelihood, it'll make it. We're talking to Kate Deneen and Brad Campbell about the environmental record of Massachusetts over the last few years. In a few minutes, we'll talk about the future.
So how are the EVs doing, Kate?
So really, EVs have been a foundational component of the state's decarbonization strategy. Transportation is still our largest source of emissions in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it's been a bit of a mixed bag. So the Commonwealth set very ambitious targets for both EV adoption and build out of our charging infrastructure. And in their latest climate report card, they reported that we've fallen short of both of those goals. They were quite ambitious. We did see year-over-year progress, but with EV adoption in particular, we saw 2 years of growth in terms of more single occupancy vehicles here in Massachusetts that are being purchased and registers being EVs, and then it plateauing. My personal take on that is that that's largely due to the rollback of the $7,500 federal tax rebate.
Yep.
The state does have a more EV tax rebate as well that they're working to enhance, but I think that's a major driver.
And not enough charging stations.
Not enough charging stations. Interestingly, that's also kind of a mixed bag. So Massachusetts actually has the most charging stations per capita, and one of, I think we rank 4th in terms of charging stations density, a metric of density as well. So we're doing pretty well in comparison to our peers, but we still need more. We need more chargers in different locations, publicly accessible, at home, supporting multifamily. But we are making progress on those goals and have fallen short in both of those metrics. The state knows this.
Yeah.
They're working to enhance the more EV state rebate so more folks purchase it. One interesting bright spot in the EV adoption piece was light duty vehicles, like what we think of as just regular cars, is what we mostly track. But there was a jump of about 140 or 150% between 2023 and 2025 in adoption of EVs for medium duty and heavy duty vehicles.
Why?
They were starting quite low, right? Like if you go back, so again, we still felt short of that goal, but that is an important improvement because we really want to decarbonize those heavier uses, right? We get the most bang for our buck taking those dirtier vehicles off the road. So there are bright spots. I think in the EV space, it's been really difficult to make the progress that we wanted to see without that federal rebate and with the rollback of certain standards that I know Brad has been working on.
That's Kate Deneen from A Better City. She's joined here by Brad Campbell from the Conservation Law Foundation.
One quick thing before we get to looking forward. I would think that this whole Iran Strait of Hormuz situation would have been a boon for, we need more wind farms, we need more renewables, we need more EVs and all that kind of stuff. And I wonder if you see that politically, that there has been more of a change. Or like this, when we're looking out at the smoke from...
Absolutely, Marjorie. I joke that Trump has given us a carbon tax beyond an environmentalist's wildest dreams.
Okay.
And in New England in particular, it really defeats this narrative that's been around for a while, that if we only have more and bigger pipes and more fossil fuels, we'd have affordable energy. It doesn't get cheaper if the commodity going into the pipe is getting more and more expensive. Before the war, before the Ukraine war even, all the predictions were for consistently rising gas prices, natural gas prices going forward. And this really proves out that case and debunks this notion that natural gas should have a future in New England.
So what is the future in New England?
I think it'll be progressive electrification, expansion of the renewables we have. We already have 140 turbines spinning now, keeping electricity cheaper. Trump is in the way of much of that, but that will not last forever. And at the end of the day, price will win out, and renewables are winning on price.
They're cheaper.
They're cheaper. It's the reason Trump is throwing all these sops and props at the fossil fuel industry, $10 billion more per year in subsidies in the big, beautiful bill. That fight can't be won forever through those means.
Let's stay on this for a second. Both of you, because we'll have Governor Healy this month and every month until the election, and I assume we have Mike Minogue tomorrow, and I assume post-primary on September 1st we'll have the Republican nominee, hopefully regularly through November 2. So in a minute, I want to ask you what the top priorities on the climate front should be for the next governor. But, when you mentioned cheaper, you and Marjorie just talking right now, Brad, there's not a month that Bill McKibben joins us where he doesn't go out of his way to mention that. Is there polling that reflects that the American people actually know Well, maybe I should be asking you since you're, well, either of you. Is there polling that suggests that the American people actually know and believe that renewable energy, clean energy, is cheaper than fossil fuels? Start with you.
I think it's starting to penetrate, but it's not a message that's carried by most governors, and I give the administration credit for carrying that message to some extent. But I also think the utilities have been very successful. The fossil fuel industry has been very successful in hammering their message and about the wonders of natural gas.
The gas commercials, by the way, on TV are spectacular. Whoever's they are. Whoever's producing these things, they are really persuasive and good. Do you agree that it's beginning to penetrate this cost issue? Because that is the bottom line for so many people.
Yeah, I think, I look at it from the built environment perspective more than the individual consumer perspective. So we work with a lot of developers who are trying to build housing right now and comply with our very stringent building codes here. And we're seeing an increased cost of complying with the electrification mandates. And so in certain cases, it is more cheaper for a housing development to still have some connection to natural gas and electrify other uses. So it's a little bit more complicated in some of those contexts.
We only have a couple minutes left.
We have a quick question, though, about the chargers. South Carolina is complaining that most of the chargers we're installing take 8 hours. Is that true?
There are all different types of chargers.
Yeah.
I do think the majority of our chargers are not the fast chargers that you see, the publicly accessible DC.
You're allowed to say
chargers.
Tesla, even if you can't stand Elon Musk.
So who's going to sit there for 8 hours? What is the point of making chargers?
Well, if you have one, my next door neighbor, for example, has one
in their house.
In a house.
But what is the point of making chargers like in a parking lot that aren't going to charge fast?
It's for people who have no other option, right? I think that what most folks are doing now who have an EV and experience some degree of range anxiety, right? You try and charge overnight and have your vehicle fueled up in the day, and then maybe you go into a publicly available station and get a quick charge, not a full charge, because you can't spend 8 hours anywhere, right?
Okay, can you spend a minute, because we're short on time, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that should be atop the list of whoever is governor come January, Brad Campbell?
I think shaking up and holding the utilities accountable for a lot of the delays in the system, delays in hooking up renewable energy projects, delays for developers that drive up the cost of housing because they have to wait for months and months while they're paying interest just to get a hookup. And we've had energy projects, clean energy projects that have waited and waited far beyond their statutory deadline, but there is no mechanism currently to hold those utilities accountable. We have to tweak that model so their business model aligns with the requirements of the law in Massachusetts that we progressively decarbonize. It's the law. The Healy administration appointees have moved forward in very bold ways that lead the nation on that issue. Unlike Governor Hochul in New York, Governor Healy hasn't backed down. And I give credit under a lot of pressure. Some other governors are caving in advance, but the administration has stood firm. They've defended the mandates that we have in place. And I think in a second term, moving forward, using more of that internal authority that they have effectively will give them a great legacy if they should be elected and really look at those internal authorities that they already have that can move the ball forward.
Speaking of Hochul, didn't you work for a New York governor?
I did.
Which one?
It was the Cuomo-Hochul administration.
It was?
It was,
Notice she includes Hochul in the Cuomo-Hochul. I would if I were you, too.
Oh, yeah.
What would be at the top of your list for the next leader here?
Top of my list is more investment in public transit as an enabler to achieve both our climate and our economic development goals. That will require talking about new sources of revenue. The fair share surtax has been incredible for the MBTA, the millionaire's tax, right? That money can go to transportation and education alone. That's not going to cut it. The governor convened this funding task force to identify other strategies. If we want to transform our commuter rail system and ultimately decarbonize it as well, we're going to need new sources of revenue.
Did they lock those people in a basement and throw away the key? Where the hell are they?
They did. I was in it. I've lost 3 years. I've lost 3 years of my life. Yeah.
What are the recommendations?
The recommendations are out. It's a very beautiful report.
I thought the recommendations were rather tepid.
I'm happy to talk to you more about that.
Well, let's do that next time. Okay. What's the name of that thing if people want to check it out?
It's the Governor's Transportation Funding Task Force report that came out in January of 2025.
Fine. Thank you both. We'll
Thank you
continue.
very
We'll bring
much.
you back and continue the conversation. Thank you
We've been
both.
speaking with Bradley Campbell, CEO of the Conservation Law Foundation. CLF.org is the website, CLF.org. And Katie Deneen, President and CEO of A Better City. The website there, abettercity.org. Thank you both very much for coming in. Coming up after this quick break, it is Jim's favorite Meat Tube themed holiday. We've been discussing this already. It's National Hot Dog Day. The expert on hot dogs, glizzy expert Jamie Loftus, zooms in. She knows everything there is to know. Loftus, excuse me. She knows everything there is to know about hot dogs. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Brady. Listen to BPR 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, if you're trying to cook something that tastes at a minimum edible, you're probably going to be using salt. But with all those options available, table salt, iodized, sea, Celtic, gray, pink, Himalayan, does it matter which one you use? And what is it about salt that's so essential to our palates? We'll ask on the Curiosity Desk today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you
and the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, committed to simplifying college planning for families over 45 years with trusted guidance, interactive tools, step-by-step videos, and more. MEFA.org. And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting A Midsummer Night's Dream. This summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common. Shakespeare's classic comedy is transported to a neon-lit festival escape, July 22nd through August 9th. comshakes.org.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow we'll be joined by GOP Republican candidate for governor Mike Minogue, and we expect by the end of today to have a date for the current governor, Governor Healy, to join us in the second half of July. Joined now on Zoom from LA by comedian and author Jamie Loftus. We spoke with her back in 2023 when I think, in my opinion, she released the most important book of the decade, which was called Raw Dog, The Naked Truth About Hot Dogs, an incredible addition to the annals of tube meat in American history. Jamie joins us today because it is, as we've said about 1,000 times, National Hot Dog Day. Happy National Hot Dog Day, Jamie Loftus.
Thank you.
So happy to be here.
I
so
bet.
happy.
Yeah, we're very happy. We're both eating hot dogs at the moment from the Lenox Hotel across the street in honor of National. I know, in honor of National Hot Dog Day. This is, of course, Jim's favorite day. He eats a lot of hot dogs. But you know, how did this happen? How did this National Hot Dog Day? Was this just the hot dog companies came up with this? The Wienermobile people that you write about?
Yeah, it's the Valentine's Day of hot dogs.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's invented to sell you stuff, but it's invented to sell you something pretty fantastic. I'm so curious, what are your toppings?
I have mustard and relish.
Okay. Mustard and raw onion is the only way to go.
Yeah.
And don't even tell me that ketchup is on your hot dog, Jamie Loftus. No?
What is this Chicago mentality we're bringing to the hot dog? I love ketchup, but I'm also 5 years old.
Isn't ketchup on a hot dog a little kid thing?
It's for people who love joy.
I read a full guide to etiquette about eating hot dogs, and they said once you're 18, no more ketchup, Jamie. That's what I read today. No more ketchup.
God.
And no wine.
Life's too short.
Life's too short. Okay.
Jamie, I want you to know, you haven't been on the show in 3 years. I would say there's not a week that goes by that, one, Marjorie doesn't mention your book, and two, the only takeaway she has from your book is that you discovered, I think this is breaking news, that the people who drive in the Wienermobiles are having sex in the back.
Yes.
Is that continuing, or was that just a short-term kind of thing?
I have to say I have not been keeping track, and the Wienermobile drivers have bravely not kept me up to date on what they're up to back there. But yes, I think I like to say it loud and proud wherever I go. Do not sit in the back of the Oscar Mayer hot dog mobile. They call it the meat seat, and I guess it's been a thing for decades.
Oh my God.
Well, I remember when I learned about this from you about how they after college, these kids get out of college, and two of them will be assigned to drive the Wienermobile all over the country, and they either hate each other or they're married by the end of their excursion. What are they supposed to do in the Wiener besides have sex, which you mentioned? But I mean, what is the point for Oscar Mayer? Are they supposed to just give out hot dogs? Are they giving out Wienermobile stickers, or what are they doing?
So the thing that baffles me most about the Wienermobile is it's basically a marketing job for people who are fresh out of college, but they don't serve hot dogs. They give out like weenie whistles. And so they like go to parades, but yeah, there's no food, which I always find disappointing. And I have to say, when a kid goes to the Wienermobile expecting a hot dog and gets a whistle, they are not happy.
You know, Jamie Loftus, I was reading, you're in LA now, is that where we're talking to you?
Yeah.
Okay, I was reading a piece, maybe from the LA Times, I forget where it was, that was talking about 5 extraordinary hot dogs. And the lead hot dog is at a place called the Pawn Shop or the Pawn Restaurant or something. The hot dog itself is $16, which is pretty expensive. If you choose to have it with caviar, and I can't imagine anybody choosing to have caviar on a hot dog, but if you do, it costs as much as $74. As the hot dog queen, for lack of a better expression, in America, do you have a ceiling that you set on how much you're willing to spend, even on a hot dog that you hear is the best in the land? Is there a ceiling?
I think for me, I mean, I would certainly not pay $74 for a hot dog. At that point, I'm like, you're defeating the purpose of the dish. The dish is to be quick, delicious, and if I'm being generous with inflation, a nice hot dog for me tops out around $12. That's the highest I think that I would pay for like a good hot dog with like a nice, like a King's Hawaiian bun, something fancy.
Can I stay on that note for a second? My younger daughter and I will drive 30 minutes each direction whenever she's in town to Costco, not to get a deal on furniture or a grill, but to get a fabulous hot dog, huge, for $1.50 with unlimited fountain drinks. What do you think of the Costco hot dog?
I like it. It's a good hot dog. Do you know the story that goes with it? There is a story that feels to me, I get paranoid and I think it's CEO propaganda, but I guess it is true.
We've told the story, but not in years. Share the story, because I love it and I hope it's true.
It's definitely true.
Oh, good.
But I believe the co-owner or the co-founder of Costco insists that it stays $1.50 and that it's a loss leader forever. And at one point, a president of Costco said, "Hey, we're losing too much money on this." And he said, "Figure it out. If you raise the price of the hot dog, I will kill you."
I love that.
I love that.
It's very powerful. It's a very powerful anecdote. He's got this like CEO for the people kind of thing that you're like, all right, man, as long as the hot dog stays $1.50, you won't be hearing from me.
Exactly.
We're speaking with Jamie Loftus, comedian, hot dog expert, connoisseur of hot dogs, tube meat expert as well, and the book which is a riot, is Raw Dog. So, I mean,
it's not just a riot. She talks about the underside of the industry
well, you
too,
do.
but it is a riot.
And after reading about the underside of the industry, it makes you kind of much less enthusiastic about it.
So don't read that part of the book. That's the solution.
Well, I had to read some of it this morning. I'm eating the hot dog anyway. But I just wondered, I mean, you were eating hot dogs coast to coast. I mean, do you still eat hot dogs, or are you kind of grossed out by the whole underside, which Jim was just talking about? I mean, the worst parts of pigs and the worst parts of cows and all the horrible stuff
What's
in
your
the
point?
slaughterhouses. I was asking a question, Jim.
Oh, I just want to know what's wrong with that.
Are you still eating dogs, is my question.
I in fact had one last night. I have to say, I went to, yes, I don't have them nearly as much as I did, and I try to eat them more ethically where I can, because there are more ethically sourced meat that you can get. I try to do my research, but last night I went to Carney's in Los Angeles, which is just like an excellent chili dog, because I wanted to observe the holiday. And it's not summer without a hot dog. Although there's so many, since I wrote the book, there's so many more vegan and vegetarian hot dogs in grocery stores, which is also very encouraging.
Have you had them?
Yeah. There's some really good vegan dog. The Impossible dog is pretty solid. When Joey Chestnut endorsed it a couple of years ago. That was huge.
Well, he was disqualified because of that, wasn't he? For a year,
Yeah.
didn't he lose his job for a year at Nathan's?
I guess if that is a job, then he lost
whatever.
it. But that blew up in their face, though, because they realized, I think that was the year that they figured out Joey Chestnut is more famous than the contest. People didn't really watch that year.
You know, last thing from me, I know first of all, I can't remember from when we talked to you, did you not meet Joey Chestnut in your travels? You did, right? Okay. So I have to say, it's hard for me, does not include politicians. The single most disgusting thing that you can see in any year is to watch the Nathan's hot dog eating contest on July 4th. And what particularly Chestnut, who is the greatest hot dog stuffer of all time, what's your reflection on the contest in light of your stature in the hot dog community, Jamie Loftus?
I really have a lot of love for the contest. It's definitely I get into it in the book, there's a dark underbelly to the contest as well. There's a lot of, I think, unpleasant tendencies within the contest, but it is an athletic endeavor.
It is?
Eating 66 it really is, because I think people say, like, oh, anyone could eat 66 hot dogs, and why would you want to? But it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, and, it's not pleasant to watch Joey Chestnut do what he does, but it takes, it would kill most people. It's pretty impressive.
And it's usually like 95 degrees when they're doing it on July 4th, which makes it even worse.
I can only see the top of your T-shirt that says Oscar. Obviously, the other half has to be Meyer.
Is it NASCAR?
Oh, is it,
Was it Oscar?
Oscar. Oh, there it is.
Oh, my God.
Oh, you are so true to form.
They start racing them. They started racing them on, I think, Memorial Day every year. They'll race them.
The Wienermobile. Oh, my God. I thought it was a NASCAR shirt. Just what I know.
No, it's two people in the back having sex and one driving, trying to stay focused on the road.
Well,
hey, Jamie Loftus, we love you, and your book is spectacular.
Yeah,
Raw Dog, The Naked Truth About Hot Dogs. Happy National Hot Dog Day, Jamie.
Thank you very much. Good to see you,
It's great to see you, too.
We have been speaking with Jamie Loftus. Her book is a riot, and she's also a great comedian, too, as well as, of course, a tubed meat expert. The book, again, is Raw Dog. Okay, we're going to open up the phones lines in just a second because, of course, Jim wanted to talk about, daylight saving time this morning, and now we're talking about National Hot Dog Day. This is like a perfect show for Jim.
Everybody wants to talk about National Hot Dog Day. So we want to know, are you celebrating this tremendous, incredible holiday by stuffing yourself full of hot dogs? Call or text, and what is your favorite hot dog? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. This is BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
$250 years ago, Massachusetts ignited the revolution. GBH News is bringing together the people, the places, and pivotal moments that took Massachusetts from colony to Commonwealth.
We all really think it's important to get the history out there.
There's a little bit of a feeling of being plunged back into history because you're right here where it really happened.
Discover the stories at gbh.org/America250.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Morningside Music Bridge, returning to Boston. The summer program shines a spotlight on young classical musicians from around the world, with concerts now through August 7th at New England Conservatory, mmb.international. And Modern Pest Services, providing integrated pest management for Boston homes and businesses. Modern Pest uses a prevention-first approach to seasonal pests to help target the source of the problem. Learn more at modernpest.com.
BPR and 89.7 GBH, Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy are live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Republican candidate for Governor Mike Minogue joins us tomorrow. I'm laughing because the texts with people who are in love with the hot dog are coming in fast and furious. As you may have gleaned from the, mouth sounds defining the past few moments, we're continuing to celebrate National Hot Dog Day here on BPR. According to the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council's website, hot-dog.org, which we're unsure is even a real thing, actually, during peak hot dog season, that's Memorial Day to Labor Day, obviously, Americans consume something like 7 billion hot dogs. That's more than 800 every second. Some of you will recall the last time we had a full-throated conversation about tube steaks. I gave myself a new title. I don't even know what I was talking about. Here it is. I'm the Dogler. We'll see you tomorrow.
In my dreams, I'm the Dogler.
I have no idea what I was talking about. For all of you lovers of hot dogs, wieners, frankfurters, give us a call, 877-301-8970. What's your favorite? What's the best spot in Greater Boston for a good old-fashioned Frank? If you must, you can weigh in on that stupid question about whether or not it's a sandwich. You can talk about vegan dogs. You heard what Jamie had to say. 877-301-8970. Here's the first text, Marjorie, anonymous. What distinguishes a hot dog from a sausage?
I have no idea, Jim.
Neither do I. Diego in Brooklyn. Yes, you're next on, or first on National Hot Dog Day. Hey there, Diego. What's up?
Morning, guys. Listen, I am from Brooklyn, and I love Coney Island, so I'm very prejudiced.
That's okay.
I prefer a Nathan's grilled dog. In Boston, I think the best hot dog is Simcoe's by the Bridge, which is in, I guess, almost Mattapan.
Huh, Simcoe's by the Bridge. SIMCO.
Yep.
Okay,
and
thank you.
They have a sign. They have a neon sign, but they haven't fixed it in years. So if you go back by there at night, it's maybe Sim or something.
Okay.
And I had a friend once who was a sound man, and he was working on a documentary on hot dogs, and he never ate a hot dog again after that.
Yeah.
And the one thing he said was lips and snouts. Lips and snouts.
Yeah,
Less you know is better.
It's really, when you read about what hot dogs, I mean, it's a desperation kind of food, right? That's when it started out because it was the cheapest.
What do you mean you mean?
Well, because it's cheapest, the cheapest thing, and people during the Depression and stuff like that, or people, it's gross, really.
Diego, I'm with you on Nathan's. Thanks for the call. You know, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When I was in college in Philadelphia, we used to drive at midnight to 43rd and Broadway. That's where Nathan's was. We'd get 2 hot dogs, get back in the car, and drive back to school. 4-hour round trip. It was unbelievable. You ever had a Nathan's hot dog?
That's why you're the Dogler, Jim.
I am the Dogler, whatever that. You ever had a Nathan's hot dog?
No, I haven't.
Okay, good.
No, I haven't. I haven't had a lot of hot dogs. I just ate one now, though.
Jody from Canton, listen to this.
The Globe has all these great lists of places to go to get hot dogs, though, with all these fancy toppings.
Boston Magazine said Trina's Starlight Lounge is #1. You know how close to my house that is? About 100 yards.
Oh, my God, Jim.
From where I live, and they are great.
36 minutes from your life every time you eat a hot dog.
Well, that's what University of Michigan said. You lose 36 minutes every day, every time you eat a hot dog, and that's the way it goes. Jody from Canton, love you guys, love Hot Dog Day. The only way to eat a hot dog, this sounds like you, is a little bit of peanut butter on the roll, then add ketchup, mustard, and relish. The sweet nuttiness with the tart toppings is otherworldly. I've converted many people. I'm telling you, try it. You'll love it. Also, yes on daylight saving. There you go. You ever had peanut butter on a hot dog?
No, I haven't.
The
finest wiener experience of your life.
Okay, I don't know if I would have read that. Oh, that's what Marjorie said last time we talked about hot dogs.
Says, I'll answer all your questions. Hebrew National are the best, especially the jumbos.
Jumbos are great.
Potato roll buns are my go-to. A hot dog is a sandwich, whether in a bun, bagel, or other starch. If eaten plain, I call it a tube steak. Also, it's true that each dog takes 30 minutes off your life. I would have been dead. If that were true, I would have been dead by age 20, and I'm 42. This is National Hot Dog Day in my house, but it's National Hot Dog Day every day.
Bob in Oklahoma, 877-301-8970. Welcome to the show, Bob. Hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Real quick story. My dog doesn't like hard treats, so I decided to give him hot dogs.
Yeah.
And I asked my wife when we were at Sam's, she said, yeah, that's a great idea. So we walk over to the freezer case, and I grabbed the package of the cheapest hot dogs in the freezer case. And she says, you're going to feed them that type of hot dog to our dog? I went, well, we do feed this to our grandson's friends. So, you know, and she went, okay, we can get into Chase then.
Okay. Thank you for that one.
Every dog.
Thank you for that one, Bob.
That Harry the P best dog from C2C like hot dogs?
Of course.
My kids' dogs love hot dogs.
No,
maybe more than anything else.
You know, they point out in the story that we're talking about how gross it is, the way that hot dogs are made. One of these stories points out that the steak is not morally superior because, all these slaughterhouses don't do a great job in general. And they have this gross statistic where 99% of COVID cases in Waterloo, Iowa, were traced to one slaughterhouse.
Really?
That kind of gives you an idea what's
you're
going
sort
on,
of
Jim.
destroying the mood here.
I'm
By
sorry.
the way,
I'll get back
Maddie,
to want to hear about
No, before you do that, I can't believe, as the Market Basket guy I am, Maddie just shared a photograph, our colleague Maddie, 2 hot dogs with a pile of fries at Market Basket, $2.90. Oh, there it is. $2.99.
Wow.
That looks pretty
That looks
fabulous.
really horrible.
Horrible? What do you mean it looks horrible?
and that was something about shoving glizzy after glizzy. I guess that's their name for hot dogs.
Down my gullet.
Glizzy after
Let's
glizzy
hope it's a
down.
hot dog.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
why.
I said that. Okay, that was you last year.
Oh, that was me last year.
Or
That's why they
whenever it
call
was.
you the dog. But Paul at Fort Lauderdale says, Harriet Heinemann, love those rides at midnight with Jim, the dog
Okay,
lawyer.
fine. It's not. I don't find that funny. 877.
It's a big mystery about Harriet Heinemann.
8970.
Jim won't disclose.
By the way, can I tell you what you were missing? I know you're a fairly
What
much
am I
healthier
missing?
person than I am. A hot dog is really almost the perfect food. It is. Why are you making a face? It's like the perfect food.
Okay.
It is limited in size. It's a limited number of bites. You can improve the experience by adding a limited number of things that make you happy. By the way, let me tell you what's acceptable and
Okay.
what's not. This is an etiquette.
I have a whole list of
Well,
etiquette
you can read that.
right here.
Mustard, raw onions, relish occasionally, and chili. That's it.
Okay.
There's nothing else that should ever go on a hot dog.
Well, some people put sauerkraut on their hot dogs.
That's
And they also
okay.
put shredded cheese.
That's okay.
Followed by spices like
That's okay,
celery or
too,
salt.
I guess.
But this etiquette thing says... yeah.
Where's the etiquette thing from?
The etiquette thing is from hotdog.org.
Yeah. That's a site
That's
that
where
I
it's
check
from.
in with every day.
Hot
See if
dog.
there's any updates.
.org says that you should not have any ketchup on your hot dog after you are
I said
the
that
age
to
of
Jamie.
18 years old.
Yeah.
And you're only supposed to use paper plates to serve hot dogs. Everyday dishes are maybe okay, but trying to forget about that.
You know why
And
that
listen
is?
to
Do you
this.
understand that? Because it's like coffee. It's an experience.
Yeah.
It's not just the hot dog.
Do not take more than 5 bites to finish a hot
I agree
dog.
with that. I agree with
What's
that.
wrong with that?
Because it is the way you approach the dog. And it is.
How do you
thank
approach
you,
the
Derek,
dog,
Thank you
Jim?
very much. One of my friends here who works with us, Derek, knows what he's
Yeah,
talking about.
okay.
Unlike Marjorie.
Okay, how many bites can you have if you are eating a foot-long wiener, Jim? The finest wiener experience
Okay,
of
fine.
your
With
life.
Marjorie, the finest wiener experience she's ever had. By the way, I don't know about footlongs. They have great footlongs at the pier in Provincetown,
Okay.
by the way. No, but let me just say this.
Hot dog etiquette has the
person
answer.
said, what is the answer?
Well, according to hotdog.org,
Yes.
7...
It's the authoritative source.
It's kind of like the encyclopedia of all things hot dog. For a foot-long wiener, 7 bites are acceptable.
I want you to know the only site, I check this every
Mm-hmm.
once in a while, the only site I go to more than gbhnews.org is hotdog.com.
It's hotdog.org, Jim.
That's why I haven't gotten the results that I've been looking for lately. I've been going
A
to the
whole
wrong
list.
site.
And you're never supposed to bring wine to a hot dog barbecue.
No.
Beer, soda, lemonade, and iced tea.
Do you know that before you read that?
No, I had no idea.
Will you have wine with a hot dog?
I haven't thought about it that much.
Well, I
to tell
would
you
if I
the
were
truth, 'cause
you.
I
Chef
don't
Johnny, perfect. You're from Framingham. We're talking about hot dogs on National Hot Dog Day. Hello there.
Yes, this is Chef Johnny. We've spoken once before.
I remember that very well, Chef.
Hi.
Hi.
And when I had went to my cooking school back in the late 70s, that's where we went for our first field trip to a meat packing company.
Fabulous.
And going through it, you wouldn't believe how disgusting the product, how
Thank
it's
you.
made.
Thank you
After
for that.
that, you would never want to continue with another
It's true.
hot dog in your life.
It's true.
And actually, I have such good sensitivity. Maybe over 2 years ago, I had a hot dog, but I could actually taste the sodium nitrate that they use.
Yeah.
So I'm celebrating today by making a wayside in. Instead of using meatloaf, I'm using a ground turkey loaf, and it's going to be my national turkey loaf and substitute for a bad hot dog.
Can you do me a personal favor, Chef? Next time you're going to a cocktail party, text me so I make sure I don't go to that one. Chef, thank you for the call.
We have some advice from our texters.
But by the way, if you go into the research, it is horrible. You read Jamie's book, well, it's funny, two-thirds. Right. A third talks about the horrible situation. What is it that you eat regularly?
Well, she did.
That is
hear
not
what she
a product
said.
of
Hear what
a
she
lot of
said
horrible
after
stuff.
traversing the country and eating hot dogs. Eating so many hot dogs was not always easy on the body, said Jamie. I felt like I was on the verge of death. So there you go.
I love that feeling, by the way. That's how I feel after every hot dog.
But our texters are saying you do not want to Google hotdog.com.
Well, then don't tell them.
hot-dog.org.
No, hot-dog.org.
Hot-dog.org.
Do you grill your buns, so to speak?
Jim, as I keep telling you, I'm not really as into hot dogs as you are.
What do you do during the summer? What do you eat in the summer if you don't eat a hot dog?
Cheeseburgers.
Oh.
But I shouldn't feel morally superior because they're just as bad. I mean, they're grossly made too.
You do sound like you feel
But you have to go to
That's
why I go to Whole Foods, because even though you have to pay a lot more money, you get the hormone antibiotic-free meat, which is better for us all.
You know what they have at Whole Foods? Hot dogs.
They do have hot dogs.
They have hot dogs.
Yeah, they do. But they're morally superior hot dogs, I think. I hope. John from Rhode Island. What do you think, John?
Hey, John.
Hey, the difference between a hot dog and a sausage is just meat that's stuffed in a casing with spices and whatnot. Yeah. And a hot dog, the meat is fermented, or there's a chemical process.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you know that, John?
And the best
How do you know that?
I've made sausage, so I know the difference. I can't make a hot dog. I don't really ferment the meat, so I just would rather stuff a casing and make a sausage.
By the way,
and the
go ahead,
best
Chuck.
hot dogs in Rhode Island are New York System dogs, either from the Wiener-Rama or from the Olneyville Wiener place.
Can I tell you, if I could own one restaurant, it would be named Wiener-Rama. That is such a fabulous... Where is that?
It's the best.
Where is it?
It's in Cranston.
Cranston.
It's in Cranston, Rhode Island on Route 5.
We'll check it out.
How have I missed that?
That was a really
sure.
What's that, John? Keep going. You're a fount of information. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said I'm not sure how you missed it, but you can only get New York Systems in Rhode Island.
Got it.
And it's the hot dog. There's two different kinds, skinless or the one on a rope where they cut the ends off.
Skinless, let me just tell you something. You talked about casings. The critical thing on a hot dog, which you don't make, you only make sausage, is the snap. It's got to explode in your mouth. If it doesn't explode, there's no point to do it. John, that was an excellent call. You know, Andrea Cabral used to talk to us about an expensive, fabulous hot dog in Rhode Island where she's from. What's that called?
Well, I don't know. She's from East Providence.
I know she's from
But
Rhode
that's
Island.
not far from Cranston.
Here is, by the way, is local woman, Jennifer Coolidge, in the 2003 sequel, Legally Blonde 2, Red, White, and Blonde.
Oh, my God. You look like the 4th of July. It makes me want a hot dog real bad.
She is just the best. She is every line.
Okay,
so
here's an enthusiast, texter who calls himself the South Coast Duffer on YouTube.
Perfect.
I worked at A&W Root Beer in Harwich as a kid. One day the owner made me a chili cheese dog with fresh chopped onions. Life-changing day. It is a once or twice a year treat. There you go, Jim.
Can I say one more thing about Costco? Is Edgar there, by the way? We'll talk to him in a second.
Yep.
He's there. Costco not only has relish, mustard, and ketchup, which they shouldn't have for a hot dog. You know what they have, which almost no place has? This is for a $1.50 hot dog with the soda.
What do they have, Jim?
Raw onion. Chopped raw onion. It's heaven. Is Edgar there?
I'm here.
Are you a hot dog guy, yes or no? Yes, obviously.
Yes, okay. I love hot dogs.
And do you have a point of view?
I do have a point of view.
What
so
is it?
the superior hot dog is the all beef hot dog. I
course.
think that, I mean, without question, no doubt about it.
Yes.
I'm very proud. Jim, you're a Philadelphia guy. I'm very proud of the fact that the Phillies had dollar dog nights for years, and the fans got so unruly at dollar dog nights that they had to stop doing it, and that makes me proud as a Philadelphia fan.
Yeah, I'd be proud
People
too.
are
That's
that nutty about hot dogs. So I would say the way I'm really into eating my hot dogs. Hot dog, a dill pickle spear, and a little bit of sriracha on your hot dog.
I don't think so.
What do you mean you don't think so?
I really don't think so.
What?
Despite that, what are you doing
why?
on your show? Because you don't put... No
He's
sriracha
celebrating
on.
National Hot
I
Dog
like
Day
spicy.
on his show,
I don't
as well
care
he
what
should.
he's doing. He's wrong. So Doesn't matter to me what he's doing.
Okay, what are you doing on your show?
Well, one of the great qualities of the hot dog is just how salty it is. We've got Dan Souza from America's Test Kitchen who's going to get really into the fine-grained details of salt with us, like, sea salt versus iodized salt versus like flake salt. How do you use them differently when you're cooking? How do they taste differently? So I'm excited. It's going to be a great segment.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy Hot Dog Day.
Happy Hot Dog Day.
Happy National Hot Dog Day to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Edgar. We heard 30 starts right after us, Curiosity Desk. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by GOP candidate for Governor Mike Minogue, tech journalist Joanna Stern on her book, I Am Not a Robot. My year using AI to do almost everything is hysterical. She did do almost everything with AI. Harvard's Alejandra Caraballo joins us on Trans Rights in America. She's going to be with us as well. We want to thank our crew. First of all, we want to thank the guys from the Lennox Hotel for bringing us over these wonderful hot dogs. They were delicious, even though you don't want to think about how they were made. And we want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Ariana Gonzalez, additional support from Charlie Desjardins, our engineer John the Club Parker, executive producer Jamie Bologna, our BPL staff, Maddie Gar, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, the security team here, Darius and Derek, and our hosts at the Newsfeed Cafe. Stay tuned to the Curiosity Desk. We just talked about that. It's going to be a teach-in on all things having to do with salt. How do you like Himalayan pink salt?
I actually like it.
I like that too.
You know who eats only Himalayan pink salt?
I don't know that, Jim.
Tom Brady.
Really?
That's true.
Well, we better all go out and get that.
Exactly.
Okay.
No nightshades, whatever they are.
At 2 o'clock, Jared Bowen is Starts It Live. He's going to be here at the studio with Art Sebastian Smee. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Bradley.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
See you later.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village. Now playing Hairspray, the Tony Award winner for Best Musical, a joyful romp through the early 60s based on John Waters' iconic film. Tickets for Hairspray at capeplayhouse.com. And M&M Skylights, located in Stoneham, installing and servicing the full range of Velux skylights that can help bring air and more natural light into homes. Skylight consultations can be scheduled at mmskylights.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, it's a very special hour of our show dedicated entirely to the subject of sleep and perchance of dreams too. We start with the idea of gamifying our nighttime routines. With all the tools available to track our health data, some are starting to catch Z's like Pokemon. But does all this extra focus actually lead to healthier habits? Then we drift into the science and pseudoscience of learning while you sleep. Turns out it is possible if you set your expectations right.
It's not quite like learning new information, but it's changing the fate of a memory that you acquired.
And we venture to one of your curiosity questions about what's going on in our brains when we're 2 degrees past the point of exhaustion, but still can't manage to actually fall asleep. That's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Senators are grilling Attorney General nominee Todd Blanche about his close ties to the president. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports Blanche once helped defend President Trump in several high-profile criminal cases.
Few senators question Todd Blanche's qualifications to lead the Justice Department. He served as a prosecutor in New York for years. But it's his work as a personal defense lawyer for President Trump that worries Democrats. They say Blanche lacks independence and is carrying out vendettas against the president's foes. Senator John Kennedy, a Republican from Louisiana, asked Blanche whether he was Trump's friend. The nominee replied, "I'm his lawyer," before quickly adding, "I was his lawyer." Blanche famously said in April that he loves the president and working for him was, quote, "the honor of a lifetime." Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
Other Senate confirmation hearings were being held today for President Trump's nominees. Trump selected Jay Clayton to head the nation's intelligence agencies, and Dr. Erica Schwartz, a retired Rear Admiral, was nominated to lead the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. A fifth day of retaliatory strikes between the United States and Iran continue to dim prospects for a peace deal. U.S. Central Command says on social media it launched a new wave of strikes on Iranian military targets. And after the U.S. announced the reinstatement of a blockade on Iranian ports, the Islamic Republic targeted American installations in the Middle East. NPR's Tom Bowman reports on conflict in and around the Strait of Hormuz, a global oil shipping waterway.
Iran has hit at least 7 commercial ships in the past week, damaging some, and the U.S. says nearly a dozen crew members are killed, wounded, or missing. That has predictably led to ship transits slowing to around a dozen each day, down from 30 or 40 a day several weeks ago, and well below the 130 before the war started.
NPR's Tom Bowman. People in the small city of Biddeford, Maine, are still grappling with a fatal ICE shooting this week in their community. Maine Public's Ari Snyder spoke with one woman who knew the victim.
Isabel Paredes says she got to know Duran Guerrero through mutual friends and that he left a consistent impression.
Pretty much anyone who has had an interaction with him can all basically say the same thing, that he was just a very respectful, dedicated, hardworking family man.
Paredes says Duran Guerrero worked primarily as a delivery driver through apps like Uber Eats, often bringing his 3-year-old daughter along with him. She says his death has caused so much anxiety in the city's Latin American immigrant communities that some are considering moving elsewhere. For NPR News, I'm Ari Snyder.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The New England Aquarium marked yesterday's Shark Awareness Day with special exhibits and talks. The aquarium's adjunct scientist John Chisholm says that we have about 24 shark species in our local waters. That includes great whites, duskies, hammerheads, and porbeagles. Chisholm says that we've had a busy but typical year so far when it comes to shark sightings and activity, and he urges people to stay out of the water if they see shark food like seals or big schools of fish nearby.
If you do go in the water, stay close to shore. Don't isolate yourself, stay in groups, and also don't make a commotion in the water, because that's the type of activity that'll bring a shark in to investigate.
He says if you think you see a shark, calmly exit the water and alert a lifeguard or harbor master. MBTA General Manager Phil Eng, who's been serving for months as the T's GM as well as the state's transportation secretary, says he's enjoying the double duty and has no timeline for dropping in either role. The State House News Service says Eng's comments come as the MBTA celebrates the launch of its new Harbor Loop ferry service. Red Sox open the second half of the season on Friday at Fenway against Tampa Bay, and there is another World Cup watch party on City Hall Plaza today featuring England versus Argentina. The winner plays Spain in the final on Sunday in New Jersey. If you're smelling something funky out there, blame it on the Canadian wildfires. That air is as thick as pea soup. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Bank of America, sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 2026, dedicated to offering solutions to help businesses win locally and globally. More at bankofamerica.com/gamechangers.
Welcome to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, as fly fishers will tell you, there is something uniquely meditative and healing about wading in crystal river water, casting out again and again and again. Charlton, Massachusetts-based nonprofit is harnessing the spiritual peace of fly fishing in order to help people battling substance abuse. It's called Adam's Parachute. Yes, fly fishers listening will understand the reference. After losing his son Adam to an overdose in 2024, Dr. Jim Faust made it his mission to support people struggling with the same demons that his son wrestled with. Jim Faust is the founder of the nonprofit Adam's Parachute. With him today in studio with me is GBH's Craig LeMoult, who's been reporting on Jim's organization and who, we're told, had some luck on a fishing expedition with Jim just a few days ago. We'll find out a little bit about that. But Jim, Craig, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Edgar.
Craig, I want to start with you. How did you come to this story? How did you meet Jim? How did you find out about Jim? How did you get going on this thing?
The credit on this one goes to my editor, Jennifer Moore, who, Edgar, as you know, is a very avid fly fisher person.
Yeah.
Is that the right term, Jim?
How do we say it, Jim? Is it fisher person?
Okay.
Fisher?
Fisher, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so Jennifer met Jim. I think was it a fly fishing convention that you were both at, and came to me with this story. And I was so excited to do this, to have the chance to interview Jim and also see his nonprofit at work and spend some time out on a river. I'd never been fly fishing before, and Jim taught me how to do it.
Jim, how long have you been fly fishing?
For 25 years.
Wow. And how'd you get started?
My boys, Brian and Adam, bought me the Father's Day LL Bean fly fishing starter kit.
Oh, really?
For $109.
Were they just taking a flyer on it, or had you expressed interest?
I always wanted to. I was busy at work. I always wanted to build a stone wall, and I always wanted to fly fish for whatever reason. And I read that little book they gave me, and off I went. And I didn't catch a fish for, I don't think, 2 or 2.5 years.
Really? But you stuck with it.
But I loved it.
Catching a fish is really only one small part of fly fishing, right? It's more about the activity?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important part.
I mean, it's nice.
They say that you go through stages. In the first stage, you want to catch as many fish as you can. The second stage, you want to catch the biggest fish you can. And in the third stage, you're just happy to be there. And, I think somehow I started in the third stage. But I can catch fish.
So, Jim, tell us about your son, Adam.
Adam passed 2 years ago yesterday, and amazing, wonderful, funny, kind, just a beautiful son. Miss him every second of every day. And Adam got addicted to opioids after having 4 surgeries in his early teens. He had chronic pain from a congenital abnormality in his wrist. He got the normal prescriptions for Percocet and OxyContin that were occurring at that time in the medical field, and we didn't realize that he became addicted. It wasn't until several years later, when Adam went off to college, we noticed changes. Things were different. Yeah. I mean, I'm a retired doctor now. My wife was a nurse. But, our son was growing up. He's getting older. There's all kinds of changes. How do you know when you just say something is different?
Yeah.
But eventually, through a lot of heartache and challenging times, challenging for Adam as much as for us and for his brother, Adam said, I need help. And, we got him into a recovery program, and he did the 30 days and elected to come home to be with us rather than go live in a sober home. And he seemed great. In about 6 months, he relapsed, and he said, I'm in trouble and I need help. And this time when we brought him in, he said, I'm going to do everything they tell me, everything, including living in a sober home for 7 or 8 months. And that was when it really seemed to stick. It's where he found... He used to say to me early in recovery, he said, Dad, I got to figure out who I am now. Using was a full-time job. Yeah. And he found that meaning in his life, which was this just incredible passion for helping other people who struggled with substance use disorder. So Adam worked in the field as a business development manager and then as and also as a case manager. And he helped... I mean, we have a picnic basket at home with 37 emails and letters in it that people said Adam saved their lives.
Wow.
And he literally saved someone's life the night before he passed. And I think he had some kind of it triggered him. He resuscitated a young man who had overdosed on narcotics. He gave him Narcan, he did CPR, and the young man survived. And Adam came home and said he was going to take his dog for a walk and he was going to take a nap and we found him in his room. He was dead. He took a pill, and it had fentanyl and cocaine in it. It was a poisoned pill. Adam knew he had no tolerance for opioids, and so that was the end of one life for us, and the beginning of a new one. And that's where Adam's Parachute got born.
So Adam's Parachute, we said in the lead, for folks out there who are fly fishers, that term Adam's Parachute will ring a bell for them. So for you, it's the name of your organization and an apt metaphor. So explain what I'm talking about for folks who are not fly fisher.
Well, Adam's Parachute is the name of a fly. It imitates various mayflies. It's a great fly. There are thousands of flies that you can tie, trying to imitate the bugs and whatever it is that fish are eating, terrestrials, bugs, bait fish. And Adam's Parachute is one of them. And I fished a lot right after Adam passed. I would fish by myself very, very late at night in the pitch black on the Swift River, and go to the same spot every night. Not every night, but 5-6 nights a week, because it's my place. It was just the place where I could find some comfort. And there would be a field on my way out. I stopped at this field about 6 weeks after Adam passed, and I was really felt like I was at the bottom. You talk about hitting your bottom and not sure if you can go on. And I just prayed to Jesus and begged Adam for comfort. And I walked out of the woods to my truck, and that night I dreamt Adam's Parachute. I didn't dream anything else. I just dreamt Adam's Parachute. I woke up with the term Adam's Parachute
the words just
on my lips
in your mind.
And I thought, why did I dream Adam's Parachute? That's so odd. And then I realized Adam gave his parachute to someone else the night before he passed, and that was Adam. You put Adam in a plane that's crashing, and he's one of two people, and he's got a parachute, and the other one doesn't, and it's a complete stranger. Not even a complete stranger. It could be Adolf Hitler. Adam would give his parachute to that person. I guarantee it, and I think he just ran out of parachutes.
Listen to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Jim Faust from Adam's Parachute, along with GBH reporter Craig LeMoult. Tell us about the organization. What is the organization Adam's Parachute all about? What do you do?
Well, so our mission is to bring the therapeutic benefits of fly fishing to people who are seeking long-term recovery from substance use disorder, alcoholism, drug use. Adam used to say to me, Dad, you really can't help people seeking recovery if you're not in recovery yourself. And I get that. I see that to some degree with my grief. But what I've learned is that I share a lot in common because we've both struggled, maybe different struggles.
Yeah.
But, I think if you take 100 people in recovery and 100 people who are grieving, each one of their struggles is still individualized. And what connects us? We've all hit the bottom. We're trying to stand up. We can't do it on our own. We need a higher power. We're going to face this every day for the rest of our lives. And, fortunately, fly fishing has been proven to have therapeutic benefits. And it would be the things that you would guess, Edgar. It would be decreased anxiety, decreased depression, decreased symptoms of PTSD, better sleep quality, and probably most importantly, a better ability to live in the moment. So getting rid of the past, not worrying about the past, not worrying about the anxieties of the future, that ability to be in the moment is peaceful for a lot of people. And I think that's the biggest part of it, getting out in nature. So my goal, much like Adam's, was just to cross paths with as many people seeking recovery as possible, and offer them this opportunity as they try to put their lives back together. And often their lives are just completely shattered. They have no job, no license. They have legal problems. They have no friends. They have no family. They have no place to live. They have no money. Their lives are really, really at the bottom. And I love getting them out on the water.
Why?
Because they smile. They enjoy it. They tell me afterwards that it was the best thing that they've done since they started recovery. And I mean, maybe that's because fly fishing is great, but I think they're also in a position to finally start to see beauty again. I remember Adam saying that his sponsor told him that the day he looks at a sunrise and really sees it, he knows he's well on his way to recovery. And it took Adam a good 6 or 7 months, and he told my wife and I that. He said, I saw the sunrise today. I understand what he was talking about. So I think they're just ripe for the ability to see something new, to experience something good and positive, and be out in nature. And so I think that's why it works.
Yeah. Craig, you've spent some time seeing how the organization works up close and personal. What have you learned?
Yeah, I had a chance to go up to the Deerfield River in the northwest corner of the state and see Jim teaching people how to do this, and to talk to the people who are participating, and also to see some of the volunteers he has working with him who are teaching people as well. One of the people who I talked to was named Noreen Finnegan. She was there for the first time. She'd never spent a day fly fishing before, and she was experiencing it for the first time. And she talked to me about sort of her journey and her path to getting to that moment. She said she had a problem with alcohol. And she told me a little bit about her path and her journey to getting to that moment.
I just had decided I hit a point in my life where it was definitely affecting day-to-day family, friends, that I just wanted to live my life in a more complete way. So essentially checked myself into a rehab facility for 30 days and then went over to the PHP afterwards, where I met Jim.
PHP is an outpatient day treatment program. And Jim, you came to teach at that program people how to tie flies, right? That's where you met Noreen?
That's right.
And so that's another part of this. In addition to being out in the river and teaching the actual act of fishing, Jim goes, especially in the off season, and teaches people this very detailed fly tying, which is something that takes just an enormous amount of concentration. I got to watch him do it, and it was pretty incredible.
Jim, I happen to notice you have a tackle box with you here.
Yes.
You have some.
Yes.
Let's take a look at some of these flies that we've been talking about.
Okay, now this is really just a small collection for rivers up here in the Northeast. I have collections for when I'm fishing in other parts of the country.
How many flies do you have all told?
Oh my gosh, I have probably 5,000 or 6,000.
Wow!
What? Yeah, I have a lot of flies. So.
Oh wow! Look at this. So Jim has opened up a orange tackle box here, and both sides are just crammed with all of these. I mean, it looks like jewelry, you know what I mean? To a certain extent. So these are the flies, huh?
Yeah, they are. And, it's interesting you say it looks like jewelry in the fly tying. And I've taught 1,200 people how to tie a fly.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I could teach you how to tie a fly in easily in 30 minutes.
Really?
Yep, absolutely. Wow. And then you would be able to teach someone else how to tie that fly. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
The ability to not only learn how to do something, but to then pick up a skill that you can help someone else. Yeah. I think helping is just so important.
It's the loaves and the fishes.
Yes. Well, there you go. But these, these are woolly buggers. These are sulfurs. These are Adam's parachutes. These are purple hazes and caddises and all of my Euro-nymphing nymphs. And we've got chubby Chernobyls over there and San Juan worms.
And the names are incredible.
And I teach most of these.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
People tie these themselves. Look how simple this one is, Edgar. This is just a piece of red thread with a bead on it, and that's a San Juan worm, and that will catch fish.
Really?
In fact, that may have been what Craig caught his fish on. I'm not sure.
I did catch a fish.
Rumors that you caught it. How did Craig do, Jim, out there on the river?
I mean, number one, he looked great. He looked fantastic in the waders.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to take a picture to send to his wife.
Yep.
And
I did look good.
He did, and he casted well, and he landed a fish. First-time fly fishing, which, I'd say the success rate is probably closer to 25%.
Yeah. Well, you said it took you a couple of years to get your first fish, right?
I'm not as skilled as Craig.
Well, there you go, Craig. Craig LeMoult,
it was my first time
fishing
fly
master.
fishing, but I've been trying to fish real fishing for a while, and boy, I don't stand a chance at all. There's something about doing it, though. There's something about standing in the middle of a river and this repetitive motion of casting out over and over and over again and trying to get your fly in exactly the right spot. The people that I spoke with who were there for Adam's parachute really did, as you used the term meditative before, and that's basically what they said. That some of them told me that their lives, especially when they were still using, were chaos, and to find this peace where it's just you're in touch with nature in a way that you're never in touch with nature anywhere else, really, and where you have this thing that you're so focused on, kind of like tying the flies. It takes an enormous amount of focus. I spoke to a guy named Jared Freeman, and he was coming back for his second year. Jim was hosting this camping trip where they were going fly fishing, and here's what he said about doing this and what it meant to him.
I never was comfortable in my own skin, so when I was alone by myself, my mind would just race, and I'd use substances to deal with reality and my own thoughts. With fly fishing, it forces me to be okay with my own thoughts, and I come out in nature and I absorb the tranquility and the peacefulness of what's around me, and it helps me to acknowledge and calm myself about where I am in life right now.
He also said it helps him to be grateful for what he has. He said it's hard to look out at this beautiful scene and hear the birds chirping and to be ungrateful. That it connects him in that way as well.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Jim Faust from Adam's Parachute and GBH reporter Craig LeMoult. We mentioned that there are volunteers as part of this program as well. What's the volunteer experience?
Well, I pretty much don't need you to have any fly fishing experience at all. I need you to be able to have respect and love for a stranger who's struggling, and because I can teach you how to cast in 30 seconds. It'll take a lifetime to get good at it, but most of the people that I have helping me do have experience. They do love to fly fish, and they have found that they love to teach, that they love to help. And I used to think that, teaching fly fishing, man, I would miss doing it myself. And I do. I do love to fish. It's a little crazy, probably pathological. But watching someone else get that cast just right and be rewarded by a fish and land it and see that look on their face, that'll bring me back every time.
One of the people who was working with Jim when I went out there was a wonderful character named Amy Delaney. And she is a veteran. She served in the National Guard. She was in Iraq for a full year in 2003, 2004. And she said she then drank that away for 18 years. She wound up in a VA program for PTSD and for substance abuse. And she said that's where she found fly fishing through a program called Healing Waters for veterans. And it was through that, Jim, right, that she met you, isn't it? You were doing some volunteering with them?
Yeah, when I first retired, I was looking for a volunteer opportunity with fly fishing, and I worked with Healing Waters, bringing the therapeutic benefits of fly fishing to disabled vets. So I get to see firsthand what it does for people, how it helps people.
And now Amy is helping Jim, and here's a little bit what she said to me.
You got to give it back to keep it. And the one thing that I want to do is, I don't know why I was the lucky one, because a lot of people I know didn't get that opportunity. I just want to be able to save one. That's all I want to do. I just want to be able to do for somebody else what was done for me. I have to.
Why is it so therapeutic, fly fishing, Jim? What is it about it that is so magical, do you think?
I think it may be different for everybody. I do think that getting in the moment is a very, very important component of anything that brings you peace. I think that if you struggle with grief, if you struggle with substance use disorder, I think the past can be very, very difficult and, quite honestly, unnecessary. And the future can be very, very difficult to figure out. You don't have to deal with either one. When you stand in a river and it's flowing from upstream on the left, downstream on the right, upstream, that's the future. You're not going to catch a fish there, and downstream, that's the past. Let it go. You're going to catch fish right in front of you, focused on that moment. I think that's the biggest part of it. I also believe in thin places, as Irish folklore would say, places where the veil between the spiritual and the human, or between heaven and earth, gets thin. And for me, that's. I find Adam all day long in all kinds of different situations, and I find Jesus that way too. But man, do I find him when I really need to be with them. I'm on the river, and that's where I find him. It's my thin place, and I think it's a thin place for a lot of people if they get the opportunity to experience it.
We've been speaking with GBH's Craig LeMoult and Dr. Jim Faust. Jim is the founder of Adam's Parachute. For more information, you can check out adamsparachute.org. Thank you both for being with me.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we're getting salty with Dan Souza from America's Test Kitchen. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Stay with us.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, President Trump wants a 250-foot-tall triumphal arch between the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington National Cemetery. Art critic Sebastian Smee calls it atrocious, a swaggering showpiece interrupting a solemn conversation about sacrifice, democracy, and the honored dead. Plus, before Rothko and Gottlieb became painting legends, they spent summers in Gloucester with their mentor, Milton Avery. The result was an evolution in American art. That and more today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Landmarks Orchestra, presenting its 25th anniversary season-opening concert, The Best of Boston, on July 22nd at 7 at the DCR Hatch Shell. Picnics and pets welcome. More at landmarksorchestra.org. And the Museum of Science. From live science demonstrations to hands-on exhibits, families can explore the wonders of Earth's evolution and the frontiers of space this summer. Learn more at MOS.org.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Seasoning food with salt, though often critical for a meal, comes with its share of risk. Too much, food becomes inedible. Too little, well, it's kind of inedible too. There's also so many different kinds of salt. You got table salt, kosher salt, sea salt, and many of us will use these various types of salt interchangeably, but should we? Probably not. Our next guest is here to take us into all the fine-grained details of salt. Thanks, by the way, to Beth in Newport for the question that inspired this segment. We welcome now back to the Curiosity Desk Chief Content Officer at America's Test Kitchen, the one and only Dan Souza. Dan, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
I always love coming in here and talking about nerdy food stuff with you.
And I love that you've brought so much salt. I am such a salt lover. From the time I was like, I put too much salt on everything. I don't know what that's about, but I love salt.
Too much for you or too much for other people?
Too much for other people. It's perfect for me.
Yeah, you have a higher tolerance.
Is that a thing?
It definitely is. Generally people fall within a small band so that you can pretty accurately season food. That's why some restaurants don't have like shakers on the table.
Yeah.
And they can get it pretty close, but people absolutely have difference in tolerance. The interesting thing is you can actually change your tolerance, but it takes like 3 months. So if you wanted to eat less...
It's like building up an immunity to iocane powder.
Yeah. Like if you wanted to eat less salt, you would have to go down, and in about 3 months, then you would adjust that level and you would find that food well seasoned. But
future goals for me to maybe change my...
If you ever run into sodium issues, issues.
All right, good. So what? I mean, broadly speaking, like it's a silly question, but what is salt? Like, what is it? Where do we get it?
Great question. So when we talk about salt in the kitchen, we're talking about sodium chloride.
Yeah.
And it is like the rock that we can't live without, right? We need a certain amount of sodium in our body for healthy functioning and, as an electrolyte and to keep things moving. We obviously generally go over that amount in terms of what we eat because salt makes food taste like itself. It kind of amplifies a lot of different things. And when you get the salt right, if there's too much, it can taste salty. But when you really nail the amount of seasoning, it makes a tomato taste more like a tomato, a steak taste more like a steak. And so it's critical, and it's really kind of singular in the kitchen in terms of that way. Like we use spices to add layers of flavor, but salt is a fundamental thing that you need in all of your food in order to taste it. That's why it's a really great skill to learn in terms of how you season food, how you taste as you build a dish, and make sure that you're getting something that isn't oversalted or undersalted.
Do we have a sense? I mean, you pointed out. I mean, I cannot think of a recipe that does not have salt in it. You know what I mean? Like, so that
Yeah.
But do we have a sense of like what it is about salt that does this? Like, why it has this magic quality of making food taste more like food? Or is it sort of? Am I wading into the realm of the philosophical?
No, there's definitely good science behind it. I mean, we have an actual like channel receptor for sodium chloride and one other type of chloride that kind of triggers that same thing. So, again, it's like it's something that we need. So our body has a sort of desire for it, and it has this sort of amplifying effect that we don't really see in many other ingredients. So, so it's fascinating, and it seems simple because it's this white powder that everyone has at home, but it's actually pretty complicated.
So let's get into some of the complication. I mean, we've got a bunch of it here, and we're going to do some tasting. But give me. Can you sketch out what are the broad categories of? I mean, is there a way to most broadly categorize it and say these are the types of salt? Because there's like lots of different types, but do they all sort of fall under a handful of umbrellas?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the three most common ones that people are going to find in the supermarket, keep at home, are table salt, kosher salt, and what I like to call sort of finishing salts or flake salts.
Okay.
And we can go through all three of those.
Well, let's do that.
So if we start with table salt, this is what you see, in the shakers on restaurant tables, and it's what most Americans had pretty much predominantly for decades and decades and decades. Now we have so many kinds that it gets a little bit confusing. Table salt is made from extracting salt from mines.
Okay.
So I should say right at the top that all salt is sea salt at some point in time. It's just a matter of whether like there's still water in that sea or it dried up like millennia ago.
Oh, wild.
So,
okay.
So when you go into like salt mines and say like West Virginia or different areas of the country, there was a sea there at one point. It dried up. There's salt deposits, and so they flood it with water and they extract a brine, and then they evaporate that brine off and create salt crystals. So table salt is interesting. If you look at it under a microscope, it forms perfect little cubes. So they're like little building block cubes, and
we don't break it into those cubes. That's how it comes.
That is how it gets
formed.
Yes, it is done under vacuum, and it creates this structure based on the process they use to actually make the salt. And so that's true across brands. So that's why we like to call at America's Test Kitchen, we call for table salt in recipes in general because it's standardized. So you can buy any brand of table salt. They're all these perfect little cubes. Now, it's really nice and standardized, but it also comes with this problem. We know that like flat surfaces can stack really well together. And so if you introduce a little bit of moisture to table salt, which happens very easily in a kitchen environment, those flat sides will stick together. So all table salt has an anti-caking agent in there. And that is to absorb moisture to prevent that clumping. You also see sometimes grains of rice in the shakers at restaurants, especially like diners. And that's in there to absorb a little bit of water to keep things from clumping. So it all has anti-caking agents. It's very, very standardized in that way. And then there's iodized versus not.
So what's the? I guess the difference is iodine is put in one of them and not in the other.
Exactly.
And this is because we need iodine?
Yeah, it can help with things, some sort of like old-timey sounding diseases, but with like goiters and different things like that. And so it's can be good to have it in there. It's potassium iodide. We've done tests at America's Test Kitchen, side by side, double blind, and we cannot taste that iodine in the salt. So you don't have to worry about that, but you can pick and choose based on what you want there. So that's table salt.
Yeah.
Usually comes in those little canisters and good standard thing to have on hand.
Pillar of table salt.
Yes.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Dan Souza about cooking with salt. Continue, Dan.
All right. So the next category is kosher salt, and kosher salt is, traditionally it was used, under Jewish rule in order to, kosher meats. So it's for picking up with your hand and seasoning food, and it's made to do that. It's become really popular in restaurants because it's the one salt that's really easy to season by hand. when we talk about table salt, it's very, very dense.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about measuring it in a little bit, but it's very hard. If you pick that up and try to sprinkle it, you're going to get a lot of salt.
Yeah.
So kosher salt, there's really two different kinds that you can mostly find in the supermarket. There's Diamond Crystal kosher salt and then Morton kosher salt. Diamond Crystal has these like little jagged edges on it. There's a patented process for being made. It's the favorite of chefs. It's the favorite at the test kitchen. There's no other anti-caking agents in there. And I call it the sticky salt because if you season a steak with it, it sticks to it beautifully.
Yeah, yeah. Is that because of the jagged edges?
Yeah, these jagged little edges, if you look
Sort of
at it
grip
under a
onto
microscope.
it.
Exactly. Yeah. And then and Morton's kosher salt is made by a different process. It's a little chunkier. I call it the bouncy salt. It sort of can bounce off of your proteins.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, those are the ones you want to keep next to your stove in a little container, reach in with your fingers. And learning to season by hand like that is really, really valuable. You're going to get really even distribution. If you season up sort of high. And
that's why you sort of see, it
sort of
like, looks like it's a dramatic flourish, but there's practicality to it.
There really is. And, it looks cool. And I always say, like, you get the cool points for it. It looks cool. But the real reason is if you do it from up high and with dry fingers, you can get this, like, sort of crop dust, very even distribution. If your fingers are wet, dry them off before you do it because it'll sort of clump and it'll clump on your food.
Yeah.
So that's kosher salt. That's what we cook with a ton, and it's a great salt to have on hand. And then the final category is really broad. I call them finishing salts. Some people call them sea salts, but they're not all. I think sea salt can be
a bit of a marketing term.
Yeah, or not even that, but just like it's not as illustrative of what they are.
Okay.
So these are generally salts that you're adding at the end of a dish, and most of the time it's for texture. So something like a Maldon flake salt is a great example there. There's these big flakes. You put it on the, you've seared your steak, you've rested it, you've sliced it up, and you add a little bit of this finishing salt, and you get these punches of sodium, which are really, really nice. But in that same category, you find a lot of the colored salts as well, and a lot of different styles there. So that is really about texture. And that's really the interesting thing about salt. People will talk about the health benefits of adding, different minerals in the composition or the different flavors. For the most part, most of these are like 99.X% of sodium chloride and very trace amounts of minerals. So you're not going to get healthy from those. It's not enough. It's not enough to do that for you, and it's not really going to provide a massive amount of flavor. If you have an infused salt like a lemon salt or a garlic salt, for sure. But I would not look to these to provide a mass amount of flavor.
So so in front of you here, you've got the sort of three broad categories you're talking about. We have two colored salts. So I'm going to guess, is one of them the pink Himalayan salt? Is that what that is? So we hear a lot. So
yes.
What is pink Himalayan salt like?
So it's a really beautiful salt. This one has some more pink orangey sort of tones and some more clear ones. So it's largely harvested it's mined in Pakistan, and it has trace amounts of iron oxide in it, and that's what actually gives it that sort of
the pink
color to it. And it's got some trace minerals in there as well. Again, people attribute a lot of health benefits and things to it like that. It doesn't have a lot of things going on in there, and if you eat enough salt to probably get that, you're probably having too much salt at that point.
You're doing more harm than good.
Yeah, but what's interesting about it, I think, is that it actually does have that color intrinsically in it because of that iron oxide.
So it's not added.
It's not added, but you can contrast that with, I have a black salt here, which is really stunning. You can see that it's got these like gorgeous rich black tones.
It's like
tones
shiny, shimmery black.
Yeah,
it's cool.
But what's interesting here is, you could pick some up with your finger if you want. If I were to dissolve this in water, you would see that you'd actually have a sediment of charcoal. And that is actually what's coating this salt. So underneath that coating is essentially a white grain of salt, like any of these other ones here. And they add some activated charcoal to the outside of it. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just good to know what it is, because if you use one of these finishing salts that has a coating on the outside to finish a dish and you let it sit for a minute, if it has moisture in it, it's going to start running. So you actually get that sort of like crying with mascara look, of like black salt on a piece of fish.
Yeah.
So you want to sort of look out for that versus the Himalayan salt. If I dissolve that in water, the water itself would have sort of like a blush or salmon hue to it, and so that's that iron oxide.
But generally speaking, you say if we taste all of these, they're essentially going to taste the same.
Very close.
Very
close.
Very
close. The biggest thing to keep in mind, obviously with texture there, but is measuring within the kitchen.
So I was just going to say, how do we cook with it? How do we think you're going right there? So go ahead.
So I think at American Testers, we love sort of like busting myths and figuring out what's the most important thing. And really when it comes to salt in the kitchen, it's about getting the right amount into your dish.
Yeah.
And so if you're measuring by volume, these salts have different densities. So if you have a teaspoon of table salt, those little cubes fit really, really nicely into that. So you're going to pack a lot of salt into it.
Yep.
You'll have less in a spoon of kosher salt and much less in like a flaky sea salt one.
Just because they're bigger, there's more air.
Exactly.
There's actually less salt in the volume of the tablespoon.
Yes, like think about like snow falling. If it's like fine snowflakes and it really packs densely, like versus really fluffy ones. And so, a teaspoon of table salt is going to be 1.5 teaspoons of Morton kosher salt or 2 teaspoons of Diamond Crystal kosher salt.
So you could, in theory, I mean, even as you refer to this, like the sort of flaky one as like a finishing salt, you could cook with that. You could use it in a recipe, but you have to adjust what the recipe is asking for.
Yeah, if you're using volume, you absolutely have to, and also cost, right? So table salt is by far the cheapest one here, and if you're going to dissolve it into something, if you've got all the money in the world and you want to spend it on salt, then yes, you can take these finishing salts and you can totally dissolve them into things. But I would generally go for like the cheapest thing for something like that, where you're not gonna notice it.
Yeah, and so do you measure by volume? Is there another way to measure if you're cooking? Or are you like, if it calls for a teaspoon of salt, you'll just do a teaspoon of salt, or do you do it somehow differently?
So if you have a gram scale, which I think more and more home cooks at home do, it's got to be able to measure obviously like parts of a gram. So not your big kitchen scale that can go up to like 10 pounds. That's not going to be accurate enough. You can absolutely measure salt by weight. And if you're doing that, they're completely interchangeable, right? So 5 grams of table salt is the same thing as 5 grams of kosher salt and 5 grams of a finishing salt. So some people like to do that. What we generally like to do is for small quantities of things, is to use measuring spoons. We find it a lot faster.
Yeah.
If it's something like flour, where you can compress it and volume and weight are sometimes different, in the test kitchen, we love using a scale for that. So you get the most accurate measurement. But for small amounts of spices, things like that, I think the measuring spoons are just so much easier.
We're talking with Dan Souza from America's Test Kitchen, all about salt. You point out sort of health. There are people who cannot have salt, or they're in a position where they need to be cutting back on salt. Are there alternatives for salt? I mean, is there something that you can sub in for salt? Is there something that works kind of nearly as well as salt, but maybe doesn't carry the risks for somebody who can't have as much salt?
So it's really interesting. I think you see articles all the time, especially in like food media, where it's like, don't use salt, use herbs and spices.
Yeah.
And it's like, herbs and spices are wonderful, but they are not going to do the same thing that salt does, right? In terms of like
amplifying the flavor.
Exactly, like dialing it in. And so definitely use herbs and spices, use your vinegars and your acids, but it's not going to do the same thing. So if you need to lower your sodium, and that's the part of the equation of the sodium chloride that is usually a problem for people, is the sodium.
The sodium, not the chloride.
Yeah, and so if you need to lower your sodium, there are some alternative products that use part sodium chloride and part potassium chloride.
Okay.
And so they go under different brand names. We've tested a lot of them. If you go 100% potassium chloride, you're going to get a very bitter product. Potassium chloride does not taste like salt. It tastes a little bit like salt, but has a lot of bitterness. So there are mixes where it's about 2/3 sodium chloride and 1/3 potassium chloride that are like lower salt. We find those are really great. And you won't really notice a big difference there. So I would go for that. There's an interesting, we've had this problem for a long time in terms of too much sodium. And so probably back in the 1940s, they actually used lithium chloride, which hits that same sodium channel that we have in our mouths and actually tastes great. But it had
you feel great too.
Yeah, but it had a lot of problems, and people were experiencing a lot of problems and even death and stuff like that.
Wow.
So that went by the wayside, thankfully. Potassium chloride has none of those problems, and is a decent alternative. But as I mentioned, sort of at the top there, like if you need to come down on the amount, you can. It's just your food's gonna taste a little under seasoned for a while, probably about 3 months.
But you'll sort of regulate over time a little bit and get a little more used to it.
Totally. And there's people that have like very low sodium diets. You obviously need a certain amount. I think it's maybe 500 milligrams a day for normal functioning. It's easy to get to that point. But some people are on lower sodium diets, and once they get used to it, anything at a higher level that you and I would normally like is probably going to taste way too salty. So it's doable.
Do you have a favorite salt? Or are you just like, all these different salt, doesn't matter, it's all salt?
Yeah, no, I mean, so Diamond Crystal kosher salt, like, it's definitely the best. It can be a little bit hard to like find in some supermarkets. And it's the one thing, I don't want people to go online and buy everything, but you can buy a 5-pound box of it. It's like a restaurant box of it online. And if
I happen to have one at my home.
you have
right
one,
now.
okay, good. I would have brought you one if not. But I think if you buy that, have it at home, keep it dry, it's going to last you such a long time, and it's totally worth it. So I think that's a worthy purchase there. But I really like. I mean, I like playing around with the textures of salts. And so there's, Maldon salt is a classic one from England that is really big flakes. There's Jacobson Salt Company out on the West Coast. And sometimes those flakes are like, they can be, a half an inch or 3/4 of an inch across, like these really cool pyramids. And so those are super fun to play with. But I encourage people to, pick up specialty ones and sort of check them out. But look at them from a perspective of like, are they pretty? They look nice on your food if you're finishing. And then what that texture is. Is it like light and crispy? Is it kind of crunchy and hard? Less so, is it going to solve a health problem or, really add an amazing amount of flavor outside of the salt?
All right, there you go. We've been speaking with Dan Souza from America's Test Kitchen. You can check out his show on Netflix, by the way. It's called I Changed My Mind with Dan Souza. Well worth a watch. Dan, thanks for being with us again and teaching us all about salt. Love it.
Thanks for having me.
When we return, you use it all the time, twice a day at least if you're following expert recommendations. But what do you know about its backstory? We'll pick on some important history next. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
During times of deep political and financial chaos, artists still create. NPR recently traveled to Chicago to see how grassroots organizations are using the arts to cope with uncertainty.
Art has been a vehicle to constantly radically reimagine a way out, a different tomorrow.
I'm Elsa Chang. A look at the intersection of art and activism on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Subaru of New England. The all-wheel drive 2026 Subaru Crosstrek is committed to keeping loved ones safe on adventures this summer. Subaru retailer locations at SubaruofNewEngland.com. And Morningside Music Bridge, returning to Boston. The summer program shines a spotlight on young classical musicians from around the world, with concerts now through August 7th at New England Conservatory. mmb.international.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III, streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, it's a loyal companion in all of our lives. It waits for us every morning and every night, keeps us safe and healthy. Not a spouse, not a pet. It's one we often take for granted. I'm talking about your toothbrush. Turns out these simple objects have a rich history, from so-called chew sticks of 3000 BC to high-tech floss that collects stress data in the 21st century. Yes, keeping your teeth simply clean has its fair share of technological and cultural changes over the years. So let's get to the root of the matter right now and sink our teeth into some toothbrush history with Scott Swank, dentist and curator for the National Museum of Dentistry in Baltimore. Scott, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we'll get into the modern toothbrush in a minute, but give me a sense of what the ancient roots of the toothbrush is. Like, I mean, presumably we've been cleaning our teeth for a long time, maybe with things that we don't think of about a toothbrush. What's some of the earliest toothbrushes?
Earliest thing's going to be what you mentioned about 2500 BC. Begins as we think in the Babylonian culture, and it's a fibrous stick. You kind of chewed the end, macerated the end, and then you used that to brush your teeth with. And they still sell those today, especially in Africa.
So, I mean, do we have a sense of, like, I mean, it seems like people kind of worked out pretty quickly that you kind of got to get something in there to your teeth to keep them clean for overall dental health. I mean, where does the brushing of teeth or the cleaning of teeth in particular come into the larger sort of story of dental history?
Well, overall, oral hygiene starts prehistoric man, with cleaning their teeth with like a toothpick. The little teeny bones off of fish or a sliver of bone. And there's evidence, from the way the teeth are worn and things like that, really early man was cleaning their teeth with, like a toothpick type instrument. And then, we the earliest really brushing kind of thing we have is that Babylonian culture. The Greeks talked about using a sponge, a wet kind of cloth on your finger, dipped in different kinds of dentifrice materials, recipes. So that's kind of that all is where this whole cleaning your teeth gets started.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Scott Swank about the history of the toothbrush. So when do we get to something we would recognize today as a toothbrush? When does this sort of, like essentially a stick with some sort of bristles on it, when does that emerge?
Right. The stick with the 90-degree bristles in it comes from, as we think, comes from China sometime in the 1490s. Although there is a little evidence and another source that says a hog bristle brush was made in China like 7th century, goes back to the 7th century. But as we would know it, typically we think 16th century, sometime in the 1490s. And the handle was presumably bamboo.
So I've heard that the first, when we get to, once we sort of have that sort of makes its way through the world, we get the first kind of mass-produced toothbrush in Europe, and it has something to do with somebody who was imprisoned?
Yeah, a fellow by the name of William Addis was imprisoned apparently for instigating a riot. And while in prison, he saved a soup bone from his prison meal, whittled that into a handle, cut holes in it, and then, as the story goes, bribed a guard to get him some boar bristle and some glue, and he cut that down and shaped it and put it in the holes with the glue to form, a boar bristle bone-handled toothbrush. And his descendants became the leading toothbrush manufacturers in England at that point. That was 1780.
Wow, that is crazy. It's also, I also think, obviously, like, there's the old thing about the British and their teeth. So it's, is it a claim to fame or is it a claim to infamy to be the toothbrush manufacturers in England?
Doesn't that seem ironic?
Yeah.
The toothbrush comes, but then, you get this cultural shift over time. And I don't know if television, movies, I don't think they had a similar impact, perhaps, on British culture that they did on American culture. And I also don't know if the British military instituted a program of oral hygiene amongst its soldiers the way the U.S. military did. The U.S. military actually had instruction booklets, gave dentifrice to the soldiers, gave toothbrush. Now, in a time of war, are you going to get to use this? And all that goes out the window. But a lot of that knowledge and information did come home.
Yeah.
Just post-war. And then post-war, you get, television really becoming a big issue culturally in the 50s. So I think the two coming together kind of had a synergistic effect in America.
Well, and also, my understanding, the war also sort of, changes materials and is a big part of the story of how we end up with really, truly what we think of in America today as like the modern toothbrush, sort of nylon bristles, no longer like animal bristles.
Yeah, it's really weird. I guess people had been using the boar hair and it was working, so why change something if it's working? Early dental catalogs do mention brushes with other types of hair, goat hair, badger hair, but these were more specialized toothbrushes for people, with gum disease and that kind of thing. So World War II comes along, all the boar hair is coming out of China and Russia. Well, of course, that dries up with the war. Those kind of supplies just aren't being transported across the Pacific anymore. So what do? Well, it just so happened that DuPont up in Delaware, a fellow up there happened to come up with this product called nylon. Its intentional use, I believe, was for parachutes. And that's why it was, the filaments were really, really thin, but somebody comes up with the idea to say, hey, let's make the filaments thicker and we can put them, we've still got plenty of bones for handles, and we put the nylon in the bone handle, and, you get rid of the boar bristle, and you've got the next iteration towards the modern toothbrush. And then, of course, different handle materials are tried over time, cellulose acetate and another cellulose product, the celluloid, kind of around 1900. But the problem with celluloid was that it wasn't thermally stable. So if you rinsed your toothbrush under really hot water, your toothbrush kind of lost some of its rigidity, which naturally wouldn't be good.
Scott, I'd love to hear more. We're nearly out of time. I want you to tell us a little bit about the Museum of Dentistry in Baltimore. What do you got going on there real quick?
Well, it's a museum for everybody. I mean, it's the nationally recognized museum of the profession. We've got 2 entire floors of exhibition space. Everything from, the dentist who wants minutiae about different things, like toothbrushes and their development, right on through career, dental professional careers, stories about people that have gotten into dental careers, games for areas for children. We've got George Washington's denture, one of the originals, on display. We've got Queen Victoria's dental scalers on display. So, I mean, there's a lot to see here.
Well worth a trip. We've been speaking with Scott Swank, dentist and curator of the National Museum of Dentistry in Baltimore. Scott, thanks so much for being with us today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And that about does it for us for now. Curiosity Desk is produced by a crack team of folks. We thank them to the bottom of our hearts. Patty Daniels and Jamie Bologna always make sure our show is cavity-free. John LeClaw Parker, our engineer. Special thanks to Andrew Massawa and Bill Francis today. We'll be right back here in 23 short hours. We got the podcast if you can't wait that long. Hope you stay well out there. Until next time, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Boston Symphony Orchestra, presenting concerts at Tanglewood all summer long. Highlights include the BSO and Pops, classical soloists, and the Popular Artist Series. More at tanglewood.org.
Sister Boniface is on the case after the owner of a perfumery ends up dead. Can she sniff out the murderer? Find out and catch Sister Boniface Mysteries tonight at 8 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Culture Show News Desk, I'm Henry Santoro. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health is reporting the high bacteria counts, and the closures come as the region deals with another heat wave where getting your bathing suit wet is the ultimate way of cooling off. Of the 40 beaches that are closed, 4 are located in Bristol County. They are Freetown Town Beach, Moses Smith Creek in Dartmouth, Mingo Beach in Beverly, and the Coles River Club Beach in Swansea. Other notable beaches closed in the Commonwealth include Black Rock Beach in Nahant, Keys Beach in Barnstable, and Briarwood and Standish Shores in Wareham, as well as Wood Neck in Falmouth, Salt Pond in Eastham, and the Tisbury Pound Beach, and Breakwater, Town Landing, Johnson Street, and Kendall Lane in Providence. GBH News Weekly Wednesday Afternoon Culture Cast. I'm Henry Santoro. Next up, The Culture Show with my friend and yours, Jared Bowen, live at the Boston Public Library.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, President Trump's 250-foot-tall triumphal arch has cleared another hurdle and sharpened the fight over what belongs at the threshold of Arlington National Cemetery. Pulitzer Prize-winning art critic Sebastian Smee went to Washington to imagine the Colossus in place and what national story it would set in stone. Plus, it's not easy being green, especially during a drought, when an immaculate lawn can come at the expense of the rest of the garden. Horticulturalist Uli Lorimer joins us with water wisdom. What to scale back, what to prioritize, and how to keep the landscape looking good on less. And before artists Mark Rothko and Adolf Gottlieb became giants of abstraction, they spent summers on Cape Ann with their mentor Milton Avery, painting, talking, and experimenting. A new Cape Ann Museum exhibition is the first to trace the friendship, coastal light, and artistic exchange that helped three painters find unmistakably different ways forward. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Last week, the National Capital Planning Commission voted 8-1 to advance the project of President Trump's arch because he wants to have a new front door and he wants it to be 250 feet tall. His triumphal arch, which would be built between the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington National Cemetery, is intended to celebrate America's 250th birthday and is expected in September. Supporters see a grand new gateway to the Capitol. Veterans and preservationists say it violates the design and solemnity of the city. Pulitzer Prize-winning art critic Sebastian Smee recently went to Washington to envision the Colossus in place, walking from the Lincoln Memorial across Memorial Bridge and into Arlington. In an essay for The Atlantic titled "The Arch is Atrocious," he also considers what triumphal arches have historically represented and why in this age it shouldn't be a capital idea. Sebastian Smee, welcome back to The Culture Show. Good to see you as always.
Thank you, Jared. It's great to be with you.
And you're now at The Atlantic. Congratulations on that position. We're thrilled to continue reading you.
Thank you. I feel so lucky to be there. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell me about this recent visit you had to Washington where you walked. It's the best way to experience the space of Washington, D.C. And for people who don't necessarily understand how the city has been laid out and how it has carefully evolved over time, what did you find just being on the ground?
Yeah, it was great to be there. It was a very misty morning, and you're right, it's very carefully choreographed, the whole space there. And you go from the Lincoln Memorial, and then you cross the river, and just after you cross the river, you hit this big sort of rotary, which is where the arch is going to be. And so it's exactly between the Lincoln Memorial and, as you said, Arlington Cemetery, and it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. I think I just don't like the idea for a couple of reasons. One is that, look, it's a triumphal arch. We know what triumphal arches are about. They're about winning, And one of the things I love about, so many of America's sites of memory and memorializing. I mean, I think of Concord Battleground here in Boston, or, Antietam, a Civil War battlefield, is that they have this beautiful modesty, this openness, and a kind of sobriety that lets you experience it as you want to experience. And it's such a contrast, the idea of like Trump putting up this triumphal arch that's bigger than the Arc de Triomphe. It just seems so, what exactly are we celebrating the triumph of? What's winning here? I mean, we know what it is. It's about Trump. It's about himself.
Well, I want to go back to the solace and the solemnity because I think a lot of people were thinking, well, it makes sense what he's saying, that here's open space, let's put an arch there, without realizing that this was very much by design, that people want to experience this quiet in these open spaces. How has that come to be a hallmark of American design in terms of memorials and our capital city?
Well, it is open space in one sense. In another, it's not, because there's this incredibly I think, beautiful, sacred, and important conversation that's going on between the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington Cemetery. At the top of Arlington Cemetery is Robert E. Lee's house. And that cemetery began when Lee was forced, after he decided to rebel, he had to leave his home. And they started burying dead troops around his house, which was, a bit of a pointed sort of, comment to Robert Lee, making it hard, obviously, for him to return to his home. But the home is still there, and it's very elevated. And, and you look from it down across the river to the Lincoln Memorial. And so there's this sacred conversation going on there between Lincoln and his war dead. And when you think that war was all about keeping the Union intact and ending slavery, it becomes really important because it becomes a symbol of America's independence, its democracy, and all of those who gave their lives, sacrificed their lives to sort of keep that alive. And the idea of physically interfering with that conversation between Lincoln and his war dead is just so, it's repugnant to me. It really is. And it really would block the view. I mean, from Robert E. Lee's house, you wouldn't be able to see the Lincoln Memorial, which is just crazy.
Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, supporters of the arch say, well, it'll be huge. It'll be a big open archway, so that view still carries, not completely unobstructed, but still carries.
That you could see it sort of through the arch?
Through the arch.
I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, first of all, I was there up at Robert E. Lee's house, and you can see that you wouldn't be able to see the Lincoln. It would be obstructed. If you were somewhere down below, yeah, you could see both of them maybe if you were exactly, in the right angle. But it's very much going to interfere with that very important conversation.
Well, speaking of interference, how about the height of this, which is 250 feet tall? There have been long have there been regulations about height in Washington. Where would this triumphal arch stand in relation to the Lee home, to the Lincoln Memorial?
Yeah. I mean, it's just so huge. It's ridiculous. It's higher than the Arc de Triomphe, and it just seems completely unnecessary. So, I don't know its status at the moment. I don't know if it's going to go ahead or not. It's going to be very interesting to see. But there's a lot of really, interesting people who are protesting against it. Just on that walk I did that morning, I ran into a Vietnam vet, a wonderful guy, who said that, if they go ahead with this, if the construction vehicles arrive, he said, I'm going to be like that guy with the flags in front of the tanks at Tiananmen Square. He meant it. And I he's someone who's, as I say, risked his life and fought for the country and been through so much. And he felt that passionately about it. And I thought that was very telling.
Could you go a little bit deeper on what triumphal arches represent? Because I think there are a lot of people who don't necessarily know the history, and they don't know what this one in this country would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's there in the name, isn't it? It's about triumphs. They go back to the ancient Rome and Greece before that, and I think actually maybe they don't go back to ancient Greece. I think it might be just Rome, but someone's going to correct me on that. But they all are about vanquishing the enemy and celebrating victory in that sense. It's interesting, when the Arc de Triomphe was put up, it was under Napoleon I, the main Napoleon. But very quickly, and well before they finished it, he was defeated and sent into exile. And then there were 3 successive styles of government after him who all tried to complete it and sort of change the rhetoric to suit their purposes. And none of those governments survived. To me, it's a sign of a kind of, a national insecurity, the need to put up triumphal arches. And I think that that's something that America, as I said before, has rather beautifully avoided in some of its most sacred and precious sites. It's got this openness, this democratic feeling, and this not a feeling of forcing people to feel any particular thing, but just giving them a chance to reflect. You go to Concord Battleground and there are people paddling under the North Bridge there, and there are people who are going specifically, I've been there many times on July 4th, and it's very moving. You see veterans and other people going there to just contemplate what it means, that this country is independent and all the sacrifices that's been made ever since. So I find that stuff very moving, but I think that kind of rhetoric of triumph interferes with that.
Well, I'm so glad that you're talking about this in this way, because hearing your accent, people will understand that you're Australian. You did not grow up in this country necessarily. So I began thinking about how individual countries, France, for example, of course, we know we just talked about that as an example, how they look at monuments and how they come to define a country, because as you're explaining, they do. What is it in Australia?
I might have a distorted view of it being an Australian. You're quite right to point that out, because, you know, I've lived here almost 20 years, but I certainly grew up in Australia, and you know, the defining sort of rhetoric around Australia's independence, which happened in 1901, is defeat in battle. It's not triumph, it's defeat. So during the First World War, some people may know Winston Churchill had the great idea of invading Turkey, and a lot of Australian and New Zealand troops, they were called the Anzacs, Australian New Zealand Army Corps, fought there and lost their lives and lost the battle. But that was seen as a very important moment in Australia's sense of itself as a national, you know, entity, and we still celebrate that more than almost any day of the year. You know, Anzac Day is such an important date, but it marks a defeat, and I think there's something. Again, it's my bias, but I think there's something rather moving about that. That, you know, people understand that this is a complicated thing, to sacrifice your life to try to hold a country together. All these things are complicated. And you know, the rhetoric of victory and triumph is kind of a bit brittle and shallow compared to that complexity.
I was speaking with Sebastian Smee, a Pulitzer Prize-winning art critic and staff writer at The Atlantic. You and I were having a very interesting, I thought, conversation just as you sat down right before we started the show, because this is something else I keep thinking about, whether it's this arch or whether it's the ballroom. Both have a strong chance of moving forward, and I wonder about what happens in 12 years when there is a different administration. If there is a different administration, different party, somebody reevaluates what these buildings have come to represent. We also know, as you just pointed out with the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, that these buildings tend to stand and they become embraced because cities continue to evolve. Do you have a sense of how this carries into the future?
It's very hard to tell, Jared, isn't it? I mean, it depends on how, if it does get built. Let's assume it gets built. And that's far from certain, but you know, indications are that it may well. I think it depends on how obnoxious people come to find it in the years to come. And I personally think that if they have that sense of the connection between these other memorials there, the Lincoln Memorial and the cemetery, as we've been talking about, they will continue to find it very obnoxious, and they will be inclined to want to pull it down. And you know, anything can be pulled down, so I guess that's possible. But it's a big thing, right, to do that. And there's every chance that people will sort of naturalize it or normalize it and let it stand. But again, it might depend on how much people see it as a symbol of Trump and how much that's something they want to have hang around or don't. And they may well want to. I don't know, you know, how people are going to see this period in the future, but all of these things you know, have to be answered, you know, when the time comes.
Let's switch gears a little bit. You've also recently written about Marcel Duchamp, who has a major retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. You've written about it. I've also seen this show. It's kind of a landmark exhibition because one hasn't been done like this in about 50 years. In what way did it reacquaint you with Duchamp, and what his contribution to art has been, what his detraction to art has been?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's been more of a contribution than a detraction, I do. But I understand that a lot of people who don't like certain things about contemporary art probably blame Duchamp for those things. You know, I'm thinking of, you know, work that has no evidence of skill or even emotion. You know, he's famous for his ready-mades, where he would just take an object already existing in the world, like a urinal or a snow shovel, and exhibit it as art. I'm thinking also of work that's so heavily dependent on backstory or long, complicated wall labels written in sort of pretentious jargon, and even just the idea of art as a kind of cult for the in crowd or for the art world or for academics. I think Duchamp sort of is partly responsible for all of that, and it's stuff that I don't like either. On the other hand...
And we should point out, he was doing this at the early part of the 20th century. So the commentary people are having about art, he started or continued a long, long time ago.
Right. And, you know, he's been so influential. I mean, he's up there with Picasso and Matisse as the, you know, I think people would agree that whether you like him or not, you know, he's among the three most influential artists of the 20th century. And I think what I loved, I don't know about you, Joe, but what I loved about the show was just that it really kind of brought us back to him and thinking of how fresh some of this stuff must have seemed. You know, he's such a mysterious and enigmatic figure. the objects are so kind of odd and unusual. Like, why a snow shovel? Why why a moustache on the Mona Lisa? Like, he was really mischievous.
You called yourself out for that one. Maybe you're puerile for liking a mustache on the Mona Lisa, but what was he doing there, and why do you think you've responded to it?
Well, a lot of his humor was kind of puerile in some ways. He loved sort of sexual puns and so forth. I think that's one of the things I picked up from the show, this kind of obsession throughout his life, really, with it goes from an obsession with machinery and modernity into this weird kind of erotic obsession, which comes out in so many different ways. And I found that quite enigmatic and elusive and interesting. I kept trying to think, why? And he's a really interesting cat, you know. So I love just thinking about him in those terms. And then the fact is that so many artists I love, you know, loved Duchamp. And I think of Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg. And, you know, it's beyond art, too. It's like John Cage, Most Cunningham, going forward to people like Ai Weiwei, Jeff Koons. I mean, you can love or hate things about all these artists, but, you know, it's just so all-pervasive, his influence. It really is. And I think overall it was liberating. I do think that he just made a whole bunch of things possible in art that weren't possible before he came to be. And I think that's something we should thank him for.
One of the things I thought was so interesting, because I didn't realize it myself, is here's a man who continued to evolve, especially from painting Nude Descending a Staircase, another title that I think is very, very known. Even if you don't know who the artist is, you know that work, or you've heard about it, to the more incendiary pieces like Fountain, A Urinal, to... He was always making people think. He was always challenging the system. But at the same time, in the middle of this exhibition, is this concentration of these boxes, dioramas that he was making about he was recreating his work in these tiny little forms. And I thought that was so fascinating that for a man who continued to evolve, for some reason, he spent a lot of time also going back and living in his prior worlds.
Exactly. No, it's a great point. It's all very odd. I mean, I think the sort of received wisdom on Duchamp is that he quit art sometime in the 20s and took up chess. And because he was a chess fanatic and a very good chess player, and he competed in tournaments and did very well. It's not quite true that he gave up, and he kept doing things that were connected with graphic design and optics and so forth. And then, as you say, he became obsessed with his own body of work and reproduced it in this series of, as you say, boxes that are kind of like suitcases with hidden compartments and drawers that you pull out, and they show a little miniature version of the Nude Descending a Staircase or of the Urinal or of whatever it might be. And you're just thinking, what on earth was going on in his brain? But I think he did realize, especially, you know, being here in America, where, you know, Nude Descending a Staircase really had become the most famous work of art in America. It was a kind of scandal, but it was also interesting to people because it did seem to suggest some insight into the modernity, which no other artist had captured quite so well. So he had this notoriety here, and he realized that even after sort of, inverted commas, giving up art, his work still had an enormous influence. And I think he was fascinated by that, and part of wanting to memorialize his own work with these boxes was recognizing that and rethinking it, and just I guess trying to get his head around it. It's fascinating. He's a very strange person, very interesting.
I agree. We like strange.
Yes,
we like being dropped into the middle of strange, as you are in this moment.
In that show,
exhibition.
Yeah.
And I will confess that you and I are of like minds, because I took maybe 3 photographs in that entire show. One of them was the Mona Lisa with the mustache, because it is that entertaining. Sebastian Smee, always great to see you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. A real pleasure. Thanks, Jared.
Sebastian Smee is a Pulitzer Prize-winning art critic and staff writer at The Atlantic. You can read all of his writings at theatlantic.com. Again, thank you. Coming up, words of water wisdom from horticultural expert Uli Lorimer on what it takes to keep a garden healthy during a drought. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
During times of deep political and financial chaos, artists still create. NPR recently traveled to Chicago to see how grassroots organizations are using the arts to cope with uncertainty.
art has been a vehicle to constantly radically reimagine a way out, a different tomorrow.
I'm Elsa Chang. A look at the intersection of art and activism on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village. Now playing Hairspray, the Tony Award winner for Best Musical, a joyful romp through the early 60s based on John Waters' iconic film. Tickets for Hairspray at capeplayhouse.com. And Harvard Business School Baker Library, featuring an exhibit on Muriel Siebert, the first woman to buy a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, open to the public. Details at library.hbs.edu. And Roto-Rooter, providing plumbing, drain cleaning, and water cleanup services in North America since 1935. 24/7 emergency services available. Service information and scheduling can be found at rotorooter.com.
Listen to GBH 89.7. Read GBH Daily. Watch the Boston Public Radio live stream. However you get your news, find it on the GBH News app. Download it today on the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. The flawless green lawn is one of summer's most persistent American ideals, that expanse of uninterrupted green, soft underfoot, and oh so manicured. For many homeowners, its maintenance is a point of pride, but in a drought, the pursuit of a perfect lawn can be one of our most profligate uses of water, which can better serve mature trees, shrubs, and perennials. So how do we make our gardens grow without draining a scarce resource? Joining us to talk about it all is Uli Lorimer, Director of Horticulture at Native Plant Trust and author of the Northeast Native Plant Primer, 235 Plants for an Earth-Friendly Garden. Uli, welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here.
Delighted to be here.
First, before we even begin talking about this, I have to ask you about the air. I mean, we can see this yellow outside our studio walls. I was smelling my shirt earlier. It smells like smoke as I walked a fair amount to the studio. How does this affect plants?
Well, I don't think the plants are affected too much, but it definitely makes it hard to work outside in these kinds of conditions. There's just sort of an eeriness to the light, especially this morning, and it's just distressing to have that sort of wood smoke. And then I've also just been seeing some of the really devastating pictures from some of the communities that have been really affected up in Canada right now. So they're definitely worse off than we are.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the drought, and how would you characterize where we are in the drought in Massachusetts right now?
So I just checked right now of all the different regions in the Massachusetts, in the state of Massachusetts, only one is in what's called a critical drought, a level 3, which is the Northeast region. Although this is in part thanks to the recent rains that we got. That have alleviated things a little bit. Historically, over the last 3 months, 6 months, it's actually been the Cape and the Islands that have suffered the most and that have been in the same sort of critical drought situation. But this isn't. This is a sort of a compounding of several years of less than normal rainfall. We had a significant drought over the wintertime a couple of years ago. And these things, as many things, tend to cycle. Again, I was reading the last really critical drought that we had in the state was back in 2016, 2017. Before that, in the 80s. Before that, in the 60s. So you begin to see a little bit of this sort of sinus curve of droughts in normal conditions.
Well, then how critical is it that we really evaluate how we're using water and how we're maintaining lawns right now?
I think it's critical to think about water, not just in the sense of keeping plants alive, but this also affects all the other uses of water. So reservoirs, well systems that are here, all draw from really a limited source. And lawns traditionally, this was a figure that I learned a couple of years ago that really staggered me. EPA estimates that half of an annual household's water use goes to the lawn itself, which is a lot if you think about that. And water is not cheap, and it is sort of one of these sort of shared resources that, we don't live in the Southwest where people have been water-wise for much longer, but I think with the unpredictability of our climate now and these sort of periods of extreme drought, we need to start thinking about how we can conserve as much water as possible.
And I think that you would advocate maybe moving away from lawns more to native plants and things that are more tolerant in this area.
I mean, I do. As a father of 2 young boys, I also recognize the need for and utility for a space for them to be able to run around. And so I'm not, strictly anti-lawn, but I do think that, this, when you started off the program talking about what I think is kind of an illusion of this perfectly manicured green carpet in the summertime, is something that we really can't keep grasping at. A lot of the grasses that make up the lawns here are cool seasons, so they grow actively in the spring and in the fall again, and many of them are adapted to go brown during the summer, and then they green up again. And when you see that brown patch, I even saw this today on my way out here, I saw someone out in the middle of the day with a hose just spraying a brown patch. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not this isn't a good use of water, and that lawn isn't going to rebound again until the temperatures drop down. So, diversity in lawns is a great thing. Mowing them higher. If you are going to water them really deeply, because you want those roots to go and delve as deep into the soil as possible, and that's really going to build resilience in your lawn. If you just water in a shallow way, the roots are going to want to go down, and that means that they're more susceptible to the swings in temperatures and water conditions.
Well, perfect segue into our gardens and our plants, which we also really, really care about. We really, really want to take care of. Do they behave in the same way as lawns? How should we and when should we be watering our plants right now?
Well, I take the perspective that lawns, even though it's a pain, can be reseeded and can be reestablished. And it's a lot harder to do that for a shrub that has been in place for decades, or even a tree like a mature oak tree that might be 100 or 200 years old. And so while those plants have weathered these cycles in the past, by watering them deeply keeps them, and particularly this is something that we've been trying to trial out at Garden in the Woods, is paying attention to weather, knowing that we're going to have a heat wave, and trying to get water out onto some of those more drought-prone plants ahead of the heat wave. In other words, it's a stressful period for the plants, and if I can help them enter into that stressful period with available water, they're going to fare much better than waiting for them to show the signs of stress. Sort of, it's a difference between being proactive or reactive.
So you don't have to be concerned about overwatering necessarily?
No. I mean, again, the deeper you can water, and you want to water deeply, but not and sort of infrequently if you can. And I wrote about.
What do you mean by that? What does going deep mean for plants?
Thank you for asking that, because I wrote about this in the Boston Globe recently, and I got a lot of questions of define deeply. What does that mean? And so first, it really depends on the kind of soil that you have. If you live on the South Shore and the Cape, you have a lot of sandier soils, and so water is really going to drain through that much more freely. So a deep watering won't take you as long. If you have soils that are more like loamy or more clays in there, it might take a little bit longer to really penetrate. So deeply is like 12, 18, 24 inches down into the ground. For soils that will retain that moisture, you only need to do that maybe once, and then that moisture's there, and the roots can access it. So it's really just you want to make sure that it's a slow, percolating kind of watering. I think of this analogy like nobody wants to drink from a fire hose, right? Too much water all at once. So your plants, particularly delicate ones, want a gentle rain. They want to be able to soak the water in so that it doesn't run off the surface and really gets all the way down in the roots where they need it.
So here's the question I always have, because I can't quite comprehend how it works, but the mulch or what we do on the surface that theoretically maintains the moistures, how does that all happen? Because I think we water sometimes and we see the mulch is dried out right away. Is it really seeping down in?
So mulch can be your friend during a drought. Again, if you can water in more deeply, you get much less sort of evaporative loss from the surface of the soil, any exposed soil, if it's covered with mulch. You can also use ground covers, and green plants will do the same thing. So you're, again, providing a layer of shade from the sun directly to the soil, so it's not going to dry out as quickly. I think the real key here is making sure that you get enough water all the way to percolate down, and then the mulch is your friend.
Before we leave the watering, when should people be watering?
Great question. So knowing that certain regions are in a critical drought, and many municipalities are actually initiating watering bans. So I think it's really important for visitors and listeners to check with your township or municipality first about whether you're allowed to do it. But watering really early in the morning, so anytime before 9 a.m. If you're an early riser, get out there at 4 or 5 in the morning. Put your sprinkler out for a couple of hours, or later in the afternoon after 6 p.m., 8 p.m., right around dusk. And the reason of that timing is that you get less evaporative loss. The worst time to do it is like 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because you lose so much, just evaporates right off the bat.
I'm speaking with Uli Lorimer, who is Director of Horticulture at Native Plant Trust and the author of the Northeast Native Plant Primer, 235 Plants for an Earth-Friendly Garden. The fertilizer and pesticide use in this moment, I know it's always a concern. We read about the algae blooms. It's all related. But where is the impact for that, especially during times of droughts?
Well, so two things. I'm thinking, again, going back to the subject of lawns. And if your lawn isn't actively growing right now, if it's going into that dormant phase, it's not actually going to be needing any fertilizer. And oftentimes when you water and it doesn't need it, a lot of these fertilizers are water soluble, so they're going to run off and then get into these other nearby waterways. One of the other patterns that we're seeing here is infrequent but really intense rainstorms. And so when you get, rates of 1 inch or 2 inches of rain an hour coming down, the ground can't soak it up enough, and it causes lots of surface runoff. And that's another key way in which those excess fertilizers and pesticides and everything get washed into waterways that then find them ways into lakes and streams and cause the algal blooms and things that you've hinted at. So I think it's really about timing more than anything. And if let's say you want to fertilize your vegetable garden, for example, do it in the morning, and then water it in gently with your sprinkler, and make sure that it gets right to the plants that are actively growing and really need it.
Well, what my last question always is for you, which is, here we are in the middle, literally in the middle of July right now. What should people be doing as they're tending to their gardens and, very significantly, thinking ahead to the rest of the summer? And I won't even say that other season that follows. We can't start thinking about that yet.
No. I think paying attention to watering is certainly one thing. We have a couple of what I call indicator plants, so that I look at them when they begin to show signs of stress. I know that it's time to get some water out. Thinking about transitioning to really great drought-tolerant native plants. Some of my favorites are mountain mints. There's a seaside goldenrod that grows literally in the sand on the beach, and then I see it growing out of the concrete barriers on the pike. All right, so you can't think of a tougher plant, and it's a beautiful fall blooming, supports lots of wonderful pollinators and so forth. Some of our grasses are great choices. So again, if you're finding yourself having to water this, your garden plants again and again and again, maybe start thinking, hey, next year, what else? How can I, change the palette subtly, so I need to use less water.
Uli Lorimer, always great to have you here. We appreciate the advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Uli Lorimer is Director of Horticulture at Native Plant Trust and the author of the Northeast Native Plant Primer. Again, thank you. Coming up, 1 If by Land, 3 by the Sea. A new exhibition explores how Cape Ann brought painters Mark Rothko, Milton Avery, and Adolph Gottlieb together and helped shape 3 distinct pathways through American art. That conversation is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
In the Philippines, former President Rodrigo Duterte's so-called drug war killed as many as 30,000 people going back to 2016. Now there's a coffee shop run by family members and loved ones of those who died. It's become a place of communal support and to share with others who know what they've all been through. That's next time on The World.
this afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, committed to simplifying college planning for families over 45 years with trusted guidance, interactive tools, step-by-step videos, and more. MEFA.org. And the David M. Rubenstein Americana Collection in support of the JFK Library's exhibit Declaring the Revolution, America's Printed Path to Independence, featuring historic documents that inspired the Declaration of Independence. JFKLibrary.org. And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting A Midsummer Night's Dream. This summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common. Shakespeare's classic comedy is transported to a neon-lit festival escape, July 22nd through August 9th. comshakes.org.
Your trusted local news, covering the stories that matter to you. Stay informed and stay connected on the GBH News YouTube channel. Subscribe and watch on your phone, tablet, or smart TV. GBH News, what matters to you.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Mark Rothko's paintings can feel solemn, with their layered colors shifting from luminous to almost nocturnal. But a new Cape Ann Museum exhibition reveals a less familiar Rothko, young, relaxed, and years away from the work that would make him famous. Rothko came to Gloucester in 1932 with Adolf Gottlieb, a fellow painter who would also become a major figure in abstract art. Both had been drawn to the North Shore by their older friend and mentor, Milton Avery. Over a series of summers, by day, the three painted the harbor, the beaches, and one another. They gathered over and over again and gathered over dinner, and a friendship born in New York and reinforced in Gloucester lasted throughout their lives. Now, a new, unprecedented exhibition at Cape Ann Museum titled Avery, Gottlieb, and Rothko by the Sea brings those early works together with the paintings that followed, revealing the human bonds behind three very different paths through American modernism. Joining us to talk about it all are Oliver Barker, the director of the Cape Ann Museum, and the show's guest curator, Eliza Rathbone. Welcome. Such a pleasure to continue this conversation with you all. I mentioned that I recently shot a television piece with you both, and this show, I don't mind saying at the outset, is absolutely glorious. Eliza, let me start with you. As I said, this is unprecedented. This story was not known about what these three extraordinary men did here.
It's true. It really isn't what most people know best about them. I hadn't thought myself of this way of looking at the work of all three until I came to live on the North Shore on Cape Ann and was struck by the incredible importance of that setting and that landscape first to Milton Avery, who was there throughout the 20s, and then later to his friends Gottlieb and Rothko.
And who were these young men, and why were they following this artist who was 18 years older? What was it in their relationship that they thought, we will go where he is going, we will paint what he is painting?
It's because I think it was not only his work ethic, which was very strong, but that he showed them that you can be an artist, even in a time when there aren't many buyers or galleries or collectors, as there certainly weren't in the early 30s. It was a bleak time to be an artist, and he was doing it anyway, and they were very profoundly moved by that, and impressed by the artist that he was by then, since he was significantly older.
Oliver Barker, director of the Cape Ann Museum, as you became aware of this, what did you see in this story situated right where your museum is in beautiful downtown Gloucester?
There are so many wonderful themes in the show, and I think when Eliza and myself started talking about the exhibition, we were really excited about this narrative of friendship, but also mentorship. And for people who have the chance this summer to come see the exhibition at the Cape Ann Museum, there'll be an opportunity to explore how that friendship developed and how the mentorship shifted. Initially, of course, as you were saying, Eliza, Milton Avery provided such a role model for Mark Rothko and Adolf Gottlieb. And what's fascinating is actually to see once they found their footing as established artists in the 40s and 50s, they started to influence Avery. And to see that entire dialogue over 30 years, I think is just wonderful. So when Eliza came to us with this idea, I jumped at the chance. I thought it was a fantastic one.
Well, Eliza, what have you learned about what they did by day and then how they came together at night? Basically, how did the three men go about their work when they were in Gloucester and throughout Cape Ann?
Well, that's an interesting question. We certainly can see in their work that they addressed many of the same subjects. They may or may not have been side by side every day, but they certainly shared their work in the evening and what they had done. And we can see in the works that are on view, it's so interesting to see how Rothko too did bathers on the beach, as Avery did many examples, and Gottlieb too did the docks and the wharfs and the fishermen and the local scene. They shared many of the same subjects, but one of the joys of the exhibition is to see how differently they also did it. And then because the exhibition goes all the way through to the 50s, we can see how their individual inclinations continued right through into their late work. And I love that through line. And I think for people who don't know Gottlieb or Rothko so well or have never seen representational work by them, the fact that they will see quite a bit of it in this exhibition is really illuminating, and it's very fresh. It offers an insight people haven't had before.
Well, I want to go back to that, but first I want to ask, I was struck by the fact that if you have a mentor, some mentors can be overbearing, or teachers can be overbearing, they want to drive you in a certain direction. But we see that Milton Avery didn't do that with these men, again, who are 18 years younger. He seemed to want to tease the newness out of them rather than impose his own thoughts on them.
That's really true. I think he famously was quite quiet and never told any other artist what they should do. We learn that often if you showed him your work to find out what did he think or what to do next, he would just say, do another one. So
let you down gently.
Yes, but we know from the works that we can see in the exhibition that they did follow a lot of his example. They all sketched the waterfront, sketched bathers. He was a fantastic draftsman and always sketching. And we see that enormous facility in the exhibition. And then towards the end of the 30s, we learned, really resisted showing them his work because he really wanted them to find their own voices. And we, as we know, they certainly did.
Great, we'll get to that. But Oliver, I want to ask you, thanks so much in part to Eliza's work, what's the opportunity that people will have here, especially knowing that 40% of the works on view have never ever been seen by the public before?
The real opportunity here is that thanks again to Eliza and the connections that she's had to the three artists' estates, this is a very rare opportunity to actually go behind the scenes into the collections and holdings of those estates and those families who have so generously shared with us these absolutely priceless, precious things that, as you say, over 40% of the works on view have not been seen. I think one of the really fantastic things about your vision, Eliza, too, is that you have paired these works so carefully as you've been preparing this exhibition over the last 6 years with wonderful examples from some of the major institutions in this country of all three artists' works. So in addition to the artists' estates, we have 26 other lending institutions, the Museum of Modern Art, the National Gallery in Washington, all who've generously signed up. They realize that this is a rare opportunity. We're telling a story that hasn't been told, that we have the ability to tell as a place-based museum, and they have joined us in celebrating that vision that Eliza's brought to this exhibition.
This is also a great moment for you and the museum. You've just reopened after a massive renovation. What will visitors find, those who are returning and those discovering it for the first time?
You're right. You're kind to ask. We're 10 days new for an institution that's 151 years in the making. When visitors come to the museum this summer, they'll discover a completely revitalized museum downtown. We have 2 campuses. We built a second campus 6 years ago to store and display our collections. But our mothership, our downtown campus, which is in the heart of Gloucester, Massachusetts, in the historic heart of the city, is actually made up of 5 separate buildings on 17 different levels. And so we've used this opportunity of the last 20 months.
That's very New England.
Very New England, yes. Our first building actually is a captain's house from 1806. But we've used the opportunity of the renovations to really ensure that the wayfinding experience for visitors has been simplified. There are new sight lines through the building, new gallery spaces, and it's an opportunity not only to visit the Avery Gottlieb Rothko exhibition, but to explore the galleries, because during the same time we've actually received over 800 gifts of new works of art, new to the Cape Ann Museum, that enable us to tell stories that we weren't able to tell previously. Works by Winslow Homer, so many other new things that have been added to the collection. So there's a lot to see and to celebrate in that when visitors return this summer.
I'm speaking with Oliver Barker, director of the Cape Ann Museum, and Eliza Rathbone, guest curator of Avery, Gottlieb, and Rothko by the Sea, which is on view through September 27th. So, Eliza, I know it was for me, for people who know Mark Rothko's works, and they're used to these glowing blocks of color in these large canvases. That's not who we find when he was coming to Gloucester as a very young man. How do you describe what he was doing there?
Well, he was certainly adopting many of the same subjects as his mentor, Milton Avery, did. I think that's a really interesting question, because as many people might observe coming to this exhibition, it's hindsight. It's seeing the late work and then going back to the early work, which you can do in the exhibition. You see how his tendencies, which are certainly a sensitivity to color, to kind of fluidity on the surface, a love of composition. We see in his bathers how thoughtfully he composes their place. And it's not. Avery could delight in randomness because he knew so well already how to make a composition out of randomness. and Rothko's still emulating Cézanne maybe, and looking for some kind of monumentality, which he achieves. They're quite marvelous, these early Rothkos too. So I think it gives real insight into where he goes and where the look of his late work. Because when you look at the early work, you say, but look at how he's put the paint on, and look at those relationships, and it's just he continues to be the same artist. And he even said in the 1950s, when I look at my work of 20 years ago, which would be the 30s, I see an aspiration for what would follow. So interesting that he said that himself. And his son says the work is really a whole. It's one whole. We don't just say first he was figurative and then he was abstract. It actually, he himself said, it was with the utmost reluctance that I gave up the figure, because his work has so much human emotion in it.
Well, since you've brought up that one gallery, which I did, I guess I went rogue, and I experienced what you describe as where people may enter as a gallery of the late works, some of the works I was just describing that people would definitely know Rothko for, and the others. you've created a temple to these titans. So I experienced it by going through their early work and then landing there, and the way it's lit, how you've curated it is just extraordinary. You do not want to pull yourself out of that gallery. What did you intend for people to experience there, and what did you realize when you saw it all come together yourself?
Well, I was thrilled when I saw it all come together myself. I really, you work with images of the works that will be coming to the museum, and it's hard to really fully envision the result until the works are actually there. And I think a lot of things came out just beautifully, I have to say.
Yes.
Each artist has their own wall, which was, we always thought that would be the case, that Rothko would be straight ahead on the far wall and Avery to one side and Gottlieb to the other. And what I've seen now is how many wonderful visual conversations exist in that space across the room, not forced comparisons, but real kind of complementary uses of palette and composition shared between the three of them, even though, we know Avery never gives up his source in the visible world around us, and both Gottlieb and Rothko are conceptual at this point, though certainly not without subject and without a great feeling. It's about your felt response. I think anyone who comes into that room just feels it, and it's really beautiful.
Well, Oliver, a little history lesson here. As you've reminded us with museum exhibitions in the past, Hopper went through there, of course, Homer. What has been the draw that we see so many major artists throughout the 20th century and prior going to Cape Ann?
I think Cape Ann, even to this day, it's a very real place. And at the beginning of the 20th century, you have artists like John Sloan, best known for his work as an Ashcan school painter, and others who all convened in Gloucester. If you think back to 1913 and the Armory Show, it was the first time that so many American artists got to see European modernism. And the challenge after seeing that exhibition was to respond in a uniquely American way. And so many artists came to places like Cape Ann, to Gloucester, and what they encountered there was a very real city. There's an infrastructure there. Your listeners may recall that back in its heyday, Gloucester used to be America's largest fishing port. You have to imagine that wonderful harbour that's now called Le Beau Port, full with 400 schooners a day. That was how many boats were coming in and out of the harbour. And that attracted artists, I think, to come and depict the presence of that industry. We had the granite industry too in Cape Ann that was so important. So there was a realism.
So especially if you're going from the grit of New York to you're finding the grit in Gloucester alongside the shimmering sea and the beaches.
Yes, and I think Sally Michael Avery, Milton Avery's wife, famously said in 1925 that she was going to be leaving the heat of New York so she could move to Gloucester and live like an artist. There was a real pull, I think, to that area, and there still is to this day. You mentioned earlier the quality of light that is very unique to Cape Ann. And that has always drawn artists, I think, and continues to do so today too. So it's wonderful to think. We'd love to be able to say these artists all overlapped, and I don't think that's always the case. John Sloan, for instance, he did leave Gloucester in a huff after the 5 summers of the First World War, because he said there were more painters' rags than there were cows. So I think Gloucester was at that time inundated with artists, but so many great things have come out of it.
Well, Eliza, I want to end by asking you something Rothko said, something he later said as he looked back at that time when he remembered being there with his fellow Gottlieb and, again, this mentor, Avery, he called it a golden time. What did he mean by that?
I think the rest of that, what he said about that time, looking back, was he said, to pick up on what Oliver was saying, there were no galleries, there were no collectors, there were no dealers. He said, we had nothing to lose and a vision to gain. And I love that. They really had nothing. Sally described where they lived in Gloucester in the 30s. She said, we had no sink, we had no toilet, we had no bathtub. It was Milton actually wrote this letter, and he said, but it's Gloucester and we love it.
And there was no pressure, there was no competition, there was no...
No. And there was this tremendous support that they gave each other, just believing in each other, that what they were pursuing was really worthwhile. And we're all very fortunate that they did continue to pursue it as avidly and in such a dedicated way as they did, to leave us with such extraordinarily beautiful responses to that amazing environment.
Well, thank you to both of you, especially you, Eliza, for what you have unearthed working with the families that we can all see for the first time at the museum, and Oliver, of course, for presenting this. It's a great, grand reopening 10 days into your second life at the museum. Congratulations on the show. I've recommended it on the air already. People have to go. Make sure you do not miss this. And I know other art critics have raved about it, and especially that final amazing room you've created. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Oliver Barker is director of the Cape Ann Museum, and Eliza Rathbone is guest curator of Avery, Gottlieb, and Rothko by the Sea, on view through September 27th. Again, thank you both for joining us. And thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow for actor-turned-poet David Duchovny. He joins us to talk about his new collection of poetry titled About Time. Thanks to Henry Santoro for curating our Culture Cast. Today's engineer is Bill Piazzatelli. The BPL technical and logistics crew is Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, Matthew Glover, and Patrick Lally. Our interns are Katie McCabe and Adina Velasquez. Thanks to the Lennox Hotel, to the Newsfeed Cafe. We often mention our producer, Max Chow-Gillette. We're delighted to welcome the Big Maxes, his parents, who are here in the audience with us tonight. I'm very excited to meet you right after the show. Thank you for being here. If you ever miss us here on the radio, you can keep up with all things arts and culture by way of the Culture Show podcast. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.